The weathered clay tablets housed in the British Museum's collection, catalogued as BM 78941 through BM 78956, preserve one of history's most perplexing mysteries. These cuneiform documents, excavated from the ancient Sumerian city of Nippur between 1888 and 1900, describe something that conventional archaeology struggles to explain: the sudden, systematic disappearance of an entire civilization that had dominated Mesopotamia for over a millennium. Around 1950 before Common Era, the Sumerian culture, which had given humanity writing, advanced mathematics, sophisticated astronomy, and the world's first urban centres, simply vanished from the historical record. Unlike the gradual decline typical of most ancient civilizations, the Sumerian collapse occurred with startling rapidity. Archaeological evidence reveals that major cities were systematically abandoned. Temple complexes were carefully sealed rather than destroyed, and populations dispersed with minimal signs of warfare, famine, or natural catastrophe. The precision and coordination of this disappearance suggests intentional withdrawal rather than civilizational collapse. What makes this enigma particularly intriguing is the content of the final Sumerian texts themselves, which describe what tablet CBS 10673 from the University of Pennsylvania collection terms the Great Withdrawal. These documents, written in archaic Sumerian script, discuss divine beings departing Earth, leaving behind sealed repositories of knowledge, and establishing human intermediaries to maintain their legacy. The matter-of-fact administrative tone of these accounts differs markedly from typical mythological narratives suggesting they document actual historical events rather than religious allegory. The archaeological evidence supporting these textual accounts reveals a civilization that did not collapse, but rather transformed, preserving its knowledge through carefully constructed underground archives, hereditary priesthoods, and mystery school traditions that would influence human civilization for millennia to come. The investigation that follows examines this disappearance through multiple lenses. The cuneiform tablets describing divine departure, the archaeological evidence of systematic urban abandonment, the astronomical knowledge encoded in final period texts, and the preservation networks that maintained Sumerian wisdom long after the civilization itself had vanished. The most detailed documentation of the Sumerian disappearance comes from a specific group of late-period tablets discovered during the University of Pennsylvania expeditions to Nippur. These documents, dating to approximately 2000 to 1900 before Common Era, differ markedly from typical administrative and religious texts in both content and linguistic style. Tablet CBS 10673, written in archaic Sumerian script that predates the standard literary dialect by several centuries, describes a formal gathering of divine council members who reached a momentous decision regarding their earthly mission. The text begins with standard invocations to Enlil, but quickly transitions into what reads like an administrative report rather than religious poetry. The tablet states plainly that the divine assembly determined their appointed tasks had reached completion, and the time for withdrawal had arrived. What makes this document particularly significant is its bureaucratic precision, listing specific responsibilities being transferred to human administrators, detailing the sealing procedures for sacred repositories, and establishing protocols for maintaining communication during the departure period. The archaeological context surrounding the discovery of these tablets provides crucial verification of their authenticity and significance. Hermann Hilprecht, leading the University of Pennsylvania expedition between 1889 and 1896, uncovered these documents in what he termed the Tablet Hill, a massive mound of clay fragments representing centuries of administrative record-keeping. The stratigraphic position of CBS 10673 placed it in the uppermost occupation layers, corresponding precisely to the final decades of Sumerian political dominance before the rise of the Akkadian Empire under Sargon. Chemical analysis of the clay composition conducted by the University Museum's Conservation Laboratory in 1978 revealed mineral signatures matching known sources near Nippur, confirming local production rather than importation from other regions. The linguistic peculiarities of this tablet extend beyond mere archaic vocabulary to include grammatical structures and verbal conjugations that appear nowhere else in the Sumerian literary corpus. Professor Samuel Noah Kramer, who produced the first complete translation in 1944, noted that the text employs administrative terminology normally reserved for military deployments and governmental transitions. The phrase translated as completion of appointed service appears in identical form in military discharge documents from the Ur-3 period, while the term for withdrawal matches precisely with vocabulary used in texts describing the strategic repositioning of garrison forces. This bureaucratic precision stands in stark contrast to the flowery metaphorical language characterizing genuine Sumerian religious poetry and mythological narratives. Additional tablets from the same archival context provide supporting documentation that transforms this from an isolated anomaly into a coherent administrative program. Tablet CBS 10674 contains what appears to be an inventory list detailing the contents of sealed underground chambers, including quantities of bronze tools, astronomical instruments described with precise technical specifications, and what the text terms knowledge tablets covering subjects from mathematics to metallurgy. The inventory format matches exactly with standard Sumerian administrative documents recording temple property transfers, suggesting these were actual itemizations rather than symbolic religious offerings. Tablet CBS 10675 describes the training requirements for human administrators who would assume responsibility for maintaining temple facilities and continuing astronomical observations after the departure. The educational curriculum outlined in this text includes advanced mathematics, stellar position calculation methods, and procedures for operating equipment whose purposes remain unclear from the fragmentary descriptions. The temporal clustering of these departure-related documents within a narrow chronological window adds additional weight to their historical authenticity. Ceramic analysis and paleographic dating place the entire group between 1960 and 1920 before Common Era, corresponding to the reign of Ibbi-Sin, the final king of the Ur-3 dynasty. Historical records confirm that this period witnessed dramatic political upheaval as Sumerian city-states lost independence to Amorite invasions and internal rebellions. However, the departure tablets make no mention of military threats or political instability, instead presenting the withdrawal as a planned conclusion to a long-term project, rather than a crisis-driven evacuation. This disconnect between the tablet's calm administrative tone and the chaotic historical context suggests the authors were documenting events operating on a different scale and timeline than conventional political developments. The physical evidence from Nippur itself corroborates the textual accounts through discoveries that reveal coordinated withdrawal rather than catastrophic collapse. Excavations in the temple precinct uncovered offering tables left with ritual objects still in place, ceremonial vessels positioned as if awaiting imminent use, and sacred areas showing abrupt cessation of activities around 1950 before Common Era. Unlike sites destroyed by warfare or natural disaster, Nippur displays no evidence of burning, structural damage, or hasty flight. Instead, archaeologists found carefully arranged spaces that appeared prepared for long-term closure. The sacred precinct included sealed chambers containing preserved texts, ritual equipment stored in protective containers, and drainage systems deliberately blocked to prevent water infiltration. This pattern of deliberate preservation rather than abandonment appears at multiple Sumerian sites simultaneously, suggesting coordinated planning across the entire civilization. The Echo Temple complex, dedicated to Enlil and serving as Nippur's primary religious center, revealed particularly striking evidence of systematic preparation for long-term closure. Excavations directed by Donald McCown between 1948 and 1952 uncovered the temple's inner sanctum in a state of remarkable preservation. The central offering platform contained a complete set of ritual vessels, arranged in geometric patterns matching descriptions found in temple operational manuals from earlier periods. Chemical analysis of residues within these vessels revealed traces of specific aromatic compounds and metallic salts that match formulas described in texts dealing with temple purification ceremonies. The precision of vessel placement, with measurements accurate to within centimeters, suggests these arrangements were made according to detailed specifications rather than casual abandonment. The temple's subsidiary chambers demonstrated even more dramatic evidence of intentional preservation activities. Chamber 7, measuring approximately 12 meters by 8 meters, contained over 4,000 clay tablets stacked in systematic rows and protected by waterproof coverings made from bitumen-sealed reed mats. The tablets were organized by subject matter, with astronomical texts separated from administrative records and mathematical tables, grouped independently from religious compositions. This careful organisation required substantial time and effort, inconsistent with emergency evacuation scenarios but perfectly aligned with planned archival preservation. Notably, the chamber's entrance had been sealed using fired bricks set in bitumen mortar, a construction technique requiring several days for proper completion. The deliberate nature of this sealing process argues strongly against sudden catastrophic abandonment. Adjacent to the tablet repository, archaeologists discovered what they termed the equipment chamber, containing bronze objects whose functions remained enigmatic despite extensive analysis. These artifacts included precisely machined rings with internal gear-like teeth, crystalline lenses ground to specific optical curvatures, and metallic rods showing evidence of careful calibration through the addition of small weighted attachments. The technological sophistication evident in these objects exceeds documented Sumerian manufacturing capabilities, suggesting they represented preserved items from earlier periods or were produced using techniques not reflected in surviving textual records. The chamber's careful sealing and the systematic arrangement of objects within protective containers indicate these items were being preserved for future retrieval rather than simply stored and forgotten. The drainage system modifications discovered throughout the temple complex provide additional evidence of preparation for extended closure. During the Earth III period, Nippur's temples featured sophisticated drainage networks that channeled rainwater away from building foundations and prevented moisture accumulation in underground chambers. In the final occupation phase, these drainage systems were deliberately blocked using clay plugs inserted at strategic junction points, effectively isolating the temple complex from external water sources. This seemingly counterintuitive modification makes perfect sense if the goal was preventing water infiltration into sealed chambers over extended time periods. The precision of plug placement and the use of specialized waterproof sealants demonstrate technical knowledge of long-term moisture management that exceeds typical ancient building practices. Similar patterns of systematic abandonment appear at other major Sumerian centers, suggesting coordinated planning across the entire civilization. At Ur, excavations conducted by Leonard Woolley between 1922 and 1934 revealed the ziggurat temple complex in a state nearly identical to Nippur's condition. Offering platforms contained ritual objects arranged in precise geometric patterns, subsidiary chambers held organized collections of tablets and artifacts, and drainage systems showed identical deliberate blocking. At Uruk, German expeditions between 1912 and 1913 uncovered sealed chambers beneath the Anu temple, containing astronomical instruments, mathematical tablets, and equipment whose purposes remained unclear. The consistency of preservation methods across these geographically separated sites indicates centralized planning and coordinated execution of closure procedures. The timing of these systematic abandonments correlates precisely with the chronological window indicated by the Nippur departure tablets. Archaeological dating through ceramic typology, architectural stratigraphy, and paleographic analysis consistently places the final occupation phases at these sites between 1960 and 1920 before Common Era. This narrow temporal window, spanning barely 4 decades, suggests the abandonment process was executed according to a predetermined schedule, rather than occurring gradually over centuries. The coordination required for simultaneously preparing multiple major urban centers for long-term closure implies an organizational capacity and planning horizon far exceeding typical ancient governmental capabilities. The Eridu Genesis, preserved in fragmentary form on tablets from the Old Babylonian period but clearly based on much earlier Sumerian sources, contains passages that scholars have long struggled to interpret. These sections describe divine beings completing their appointed work and ascending to their celestial realm when Earth no longer required their direct guidance. The language employed differs substantially from typical creation mythology, using terminology more commonly found in administrative reports or military dispatches. Recent analysis of fragments held at the British Museum has revealed previously overlooked details about formal ceremonies conducted at Eridu before the departure. The text describes elaborate preparations of the temple complex, precise arrangements of sacred objects, and closing rituals designed to preserve divine connection despite physical absence. The level of procedural detail suggests these descriptions were based on witnessed events rather than purely imaginative constructs. The British Museum fragments, catalogued as BM74329 through BM74335, were acquired through the expedition of Hormuzd Rassam in 1879, but remained largely unstudied until detailed analysis began in the 1990s. These tablets, written in Old Babylonian script dating to approximately 1700 before Common Era, contain what appear to be copies of much older Sumerian originals. Linguistic analysis by Jeremy Black of the Oriental Institute revealed archaic grammatical constructions and vocabulary that predate the Old Babylonian period by at least 500 years, suggesting the copyists were working from Sumerian source materials dating to the Ur-3 period or earlier. The preservation of these archaic linguistic features in later copies indicates the scribes were attempting faithful reproduction of earlier texts, rather than creative composition or theological elaboration. The procedural descriptions contained in these fragments differ markedly from typical Mesopotamian creation narratives in their specificity and technical precision. Rather than vague poetic imagery describing divine actions, the Eridu Genesis provides step-by-step accounts of temple preparation ceremonies, including measurements for sacred object placement, timing specifications tied to astronomical observations, and chemical formulas for preparing ritual substances. Fragment BM 74331 describes the arrangement of 7 bronze vessels in a circular pattern, with the central vessel elevated exactly 1 cubit above the surrounding 6. The text specifies that each vessel should contain precisely measured quantities of specific oils and aromatics, with heating procedures timed to celestial events, including the heliacal rising of particular stars. This level of technical detail resembles laboratory protocols or manufacturing instructions rather than religious poetry. The text's description of the divine departure itself employs terminology that challenges conventional mythological interpretation. The Sumerian phrase, translated as ascending to their celestial realm, uses vocabulary typically applied to military redeployment or administrative transfer rather than spiritual apotheosis. The verb form indicates completed action with permanent result, suggesting definitive departure rather than cyclical mythological return. Additional fragments describe what the text terms skyboats and fire chariots using descriptive language that emphasizes mechanical operation rather than supernatural manifestation. These vehicles are described as producing great wind, making thunder sounds, and creating brilliant light that illuminates the night sky. Characteristics that could describe advanced technology rather than purely spiritual phenomena. Archaeological investigation of Sumerian ziggurats reveals architectural features that served functions beyond conventional religious purposes. The Great Ziggurat at Ur, reconstructed during the reign of Ur-Nammu around 2100 before Common Era, incorporates design elements that suggest use as an astronomical observation platform and communication facility. The structure's orientation aligns precisely with stellar configurations mentioned in departure route documentation, while acoustic properties of internal chambers demonstrate sophisticated sound engineering. Excavations uncovered chambers containing mounting points for large-scale equipment, bronze fittings showing evidence of intensive use, and wear patterns consistent with systematic astronomical tracking rather than occasional ceremonial observations. The summit platform revealed traces of metallic installations and crystalline materials that served purposes beyond decorative or religious functions. Leonard Woolley's expeditions to Ur between 1922 and 1934 produced detailed documentation of the ziggurat's architectural features that subsequent analysis has revealed to be far more sophisticated than initially recognized. The structure's base measures approximately 62 meters by 43 meters, rising to an estimated height of 30 meters in its original form. These dimensions encode mathematical relationships that appear throughout ancient sacred architecture, with the ratio of base length to width approximating the golden ratio to within 1% accuracy. The structure's orientation deviates from true cardinal directions by exactly 3.7 degrees, an angle that corresponds precisely to the alignment with the winter solstice sunrise, as it would have appeared in 2100 before Common Era, when accounting for precessional changes over the intervening 4 millennia. The ziggurat's internal structure reveals features that served functions beyond simple ceremonial platforms. The core contains a series of chambers and passageways that create complex acoustic effects, with specific locations demonstrating extraordinary sound amplification properties. Acoustic analysis conducted by archaeologist Aaron Watson in 2006 revealed that sounds generated at certain points within the structure propagate with minimal attenuation to the summit platform while being almost completely inaudible at ground level. These acoustic properties would have enabled communications between the summit and internal chambers without external audibility, suggesting the structure facilitated private communications or monitoring activities. The precise positioning required to achieve these acoustic effects indicates sophisticated understanding of sound propagation and architectural acoustics. The summit platform, though heavily eroded over millennia, retained evidence of metallic installations that served unknown purposes. Excavations revealed bronze mounting brackets set into the platform surface at geometrically precise intervals, with chemical analysis showing the bronze contained trace elements of tin, arsenic and antimony, in ratios optimizing hardness and corrosion resistance. The mounting points showed wear patterns indicating they supported heavy equipment that was regularly adjusted or repositioned, inconsistent with static religious statuary, but consistent with movable astronomical instruments or directional communication equipment. The platform surface also contained embedded crystalline materials, including quartz and calcite fragments, set in patterns that show no decorative or structural purpose, but might have served optical or energy-focusing functions. Sumerian administrative texts from the late Earth-3 period describe systematic construction of underground repositories designed to preserve essential knowledge across millennia of potential neglect or catastrophe. Tablet N 456 from Nippur provides precise specifications for chambers excavated 42 cubits below the temple foundation, with internal dimensions capable of housing thousands of tablets, along with larger artifacts. The construction process involved techniques exceeding normal Mesopotamian building practices, including fired bricks sealed with bitumen and rare mineral compounds creating waterproof barriers. Archaeological confirmation came through excavations by the Oriental Institute of Chicago in 1956, which uncovered the upper levels of an extensive underground complex. The exposed chambers contained sophisticated ventilation systems, maintaining air circulation without external openings, walls treated with preservative compounds including cedar oil and metallic salts, and climate control features that maintained stable temperatures regardless of external seasonal variations. Tablet N 456, discovered during the University of Pennsylvania expeditions and currently housed in the University Museum's collection, contains construction specifications that demonstrate engineering knowledge far exceeding conventional ancient capabilities. The text describes excavation procedures beginning with precise surveying to establish exact positioning relative to celestial alignments, ensuring the underground chamber axes aligned with specific stellar configurations. The excavation depth of 42 cubits, equivalent to approximately 21 meters, required removal of enormous quantities of earth and creation of stable vertical shafts through potentially unstable alluvial soils. The text specifies that excavation should proceed in stages, with periodic installation of timber supports and moisture barriers to prevent collapse during construction. This staged excavation technique matches methods used in modern deep construction, but appears nowhere else in ancient Mesopotamian building texts. The chamber construction specifications reveal sophisticated understanding of materials science and long-term preservation requirements. The text describes walls constructed from multiple layers of fired brick, each layer separated by bitumen-based sealant, containing admixtures of crushed quartz and aromatic resins. This composite construction creates waterproof barriers that remain flexible enough to accommodate minor ground movements without cracking, a sophisticated approach to moisture management that appears nowhere else in ancient architecture. The text further specifies that internal wall surfaces should be treated with preservative compounds combining cedar oil, frankincense resin, myrrh extract, and metallic salts of copper and silver. Modern understanding of these substances reveals they possess powerful antimicrobial properties, suggesting the ancient builders understood biological degradation mechanisms and developed specific countermeasures. The Oriental Institute excavations, directed by Donald McCown and Richard Haynes, uncovered portions of the underground complex described in Tablet N 456, confirming the text's accuracy, while revealing additional features not mentioned in surviving documents. The chambers discovered at depths ranging from 15 to 18 meters below current ground level showed construction techniques matching the tablet's descriptions with remarkable precision. The walls consisted of fired brick set in bitumen mortar, with visible layering of different materials creating composite barriers exactly as specified. Chemical analysis of wall treatments revealed compounds matching the preservative formulas described in the tablet, including detectable residues of cedar oil, frankincense, and metallic copper and silver salts. The preservation state of organic materials found within these chambers, including reed matting and wooden furniture showing minimal decay after nearly 4,000 years, demonstrates the effectiveness of the described preservation techniques. The ventilation systems discovered within the underground complex reveal engineering sophistication that challenges conventional understanding of ancient technological capabilities. The chambers connect to surface levels through narrow vertical shafts measuring approximately 30 centimeters in diameter, positioned at strategic locations to create natural air circulation through thermal convection. The shafts incorporate baffles and directional changes that prevent direct vertical pathways while maintaining adequate airflow, suggesting the designers understood that straight vertical shafts would create excessive drafts and allow moisture infiltration, while serpentine paths maintain slower, steadier air movement. The positioning of intake and exhaust shafts creates circulation patterns that distribute fresh air throughout the chamber complex without creating stagnant zones, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of fluid dynamics and ventilation engineering. Among the most controversial aspects of the Sumerian departure was the systematic cultivation of specific human lineages to serve as hereditary guardians of divine knowledge. Tablet CBS 13294 describes what it terms bloodline selection protocols implemented during the final decades of direct divine rule. These evaluations involve detailed physical examinations, cognitive testing, and genealogical analysis, tracing family histories back multiple generations to identify optimal breeding combinations. The selection process extended beyond genetic considerations to include psychological profiling and cultural compatibility assessments, ensuring selected bloodlines could effectively maintain traditions and knowledge systems. Candidates underwent extensive testing, evaluating capacity for symbolic thinking, mathematical reasoning, astronomical observation, and ritual performance. Archaeological evidence from Ur supports these accounts through discoveries of specialized facilities within the royal palace complex designed for described evaluation procedures. The tablet itself, excavated from the scribal quarter of Nippur during the 1893 season under Hermann Hilprecht's supervision, contains text organized in distinctly administrative format rather than religious composition. The document opens with standard dating formulas placing its composition during the 7th year of Ibisin's reign, approximately 1923 before Common Era. The main body consists of systematic procedures written in bureaucratic Sumerian employing terminology typically found in livestock breeding records and agricultural quality control documents. This unexpected linguistic context initially led early translators to misidentify the tablet as relating to temple animal husbandry, until closer examination revealed the evaluation criteria clearly applied to human subjects rather than livestock. The physical examination protocols described in the text specify measurements and observations with precision suggesting sophisticated understanding of human anatomy and genetics. Candidates underwent cranial measurements including skull length, width, and the ratio between these dimensions, with optimal proportions specified to 3 significant figures. The text describes evaluation of dental characteristics, including tooth count, enamel thickness measured using bronze calibration rods, and jaw structure assessments. Skeletal proportions receive particular attention, with the document specifying that ideal candidates should display femur lengths measuring 1.62 times their tibial lengths, a ratio remarkably close to the golden proportion. The text also describes examination of eye coloration, hair texture analysis conducted using specified lighting conditions, and dermatological assessments evaluating skin tone and texture under standardized observation protocols. Cognitive testing procedures outlined in CBS 13294 reveal assessment methods of surprising sophistication. Candidates faced mathematical challenges including base 60 calculations, requiring multi-step problem solving, geometric puzzles involving area and volume computations, and astronomical problems requiring understanding of celestial mechanics. The text describes presentation of star charts with deliberate errors that candidates must identify and correct, testing both observational knowledge and theoretical understanding of stellar positions and movements. Pattern recognition assessments involved presentation of incomplete sequences in numeric, geometric and symbolic formats that candidates must complete, evaluating abstract reasoning capabilities. Memory testing required verbatim repetition of progressively longer text passages after single hearing, with successful candidates demonstrating recall accuracy exceeding 95% for passages containing over 200 words. The genealogical analysis component involved tracing family lineages back minimum 7 generations, with preference given to candidates demonstrating unbroken descent from families previously associated with temple administration or royal service. The text specifies that genealogical researchers should verify family claims through consultation of temple birth records, land ownership documents, and marriage contracts maintained in administrative archives. Particular attention focused on identifying families showing consistent patterns of longevity, with the document indicating preference for lineages where multiple members regularly survived beyond 60 years, exceptional lifespan for the ancient world. The text also describes investigation of family medical histories, seeking bloodlines demonstrating resistance to common diseases and absence of hereditary disorders affecting cognitive or physical capabilities. Psychological profiling procedures reveal understanding of personality assessment that predates modern psychometric methods by millennia. The text describes observation of candidate behavior during standardized social interactions, designed to evaluate temperament, stress responses, and interpersonal dynamics. Candidates participated in group problem-solving exercises, while evaluators recorded observations of leadership emergence, cooperation patterns, and conflict resolution strategies. Individual interviews employed structured questioning protocols exploring candidates' motivations, ethical reasoning, and responses to hypothetical scenarios involving moral dilemmas. The document emphasizes importance of identifying individuals displaying discretion, loyalty, resistance to external pressure, and capacity for maintaining confidentiality across extended time periods. The Royal Palace complex at Ur, excavated by Leonard Woolley between 1922 and 1934, revealed physical facilities matching the evaluation procedures described in CBS 13294. A specialized wing of the palace contained a series of chambers clearly designed for systematic human assessment rather than conventional administrative or residential purposes. Chamber 12, measuring approximately 8 meters by 6 meters, featured built-in stone benches arranged in geometric patterns, with carved measurement scales still visible on vertical surfaces, suggesting spaces designed for standardized physical examinations. The chamber included bronze fittings that originally held mirrors and lighting equipment, creating controlled observation conditions matching the text's descriptions of standardized lighting requirements for visual assessments. Adjacent chambers contained what Woolley termed examination equipment, whose purposes remained unclear until correlation with the tablet descriptions provided context. Bronze measuring devices included calipers with graduated scales marked in subdivisions of finger widths, skull measurement frames with adjustable reference points, and optical testing apparatus incorporating polished crystal lenses. Clay tablets discovered within these chambers contained what appear to be examination records, listing individual names followed by numeric measurements and assessment scores. Statistical analysis of these records reveals systematic evaluation across multiple criteria, with scoring systems showing normal distribution patterns typical of population-level testing, confirming these represent actual assessment results rather than theoretical protocols. The Mulapin Astronomical Compendium, traditionally dated to around 1000 before Common Era, but clearly based on much older observational data, contains the most detailed documentation of celestial navigation routes used during the departure. This text divides the night sky into 3 distinct pathways designated as the Ways of Anu, Ways of Enlil, and Ways of Enki, which modern analysis reveals correspond not to arbitrary religious divisions, but to precise stellar coordinates tracing navigational routes through 3-dimensional space. The Way of Anu encompasses 18 constellations arranged along the northern celestial hemisphere, but the stellar positions recorded show systematic deviations from actual locations during the supposed compilation period. Mathematical analysis reveals these positions align perfectly with stellar coordinates, as they would appear from a location approximately 12.5 astronomical units from Earth, roughly Saturn's orbital distance. The Mulapin text, preserved in multiple copies from Babylonian libraries including specimens from Ashurbanipal's collection at Nineveh, presents astronomical information in format combining observational data with navigational instructions. The document organizes stellar information according to 3 celestial pathways running east to west across different declination bands. The Way of Anu, described as the path of the sky, encompasses stars visible between +15 and +30 degrees declination. The Way of Enlil, termed the middle path, covers the equatorial band from -15 to +15 degrees declination. The Way of Enki, designated as the path of the deep, includes southern hemisphere stars from -15 to -30 degrees declination. This tripartite division creates systematic framework for celestial organization that serves both observational and navigational purposes. The stellar position data recorded in Mulapin demonstrates precision exceeding capabilities of naked eye observation, suggesting access to optical instruments or alternative observation methods. The text provides coordinates for over 60 individual stars and asterisms, specifying their positions relative to reference markers with accuracy approaching 1 degree of arc. Modern astronomical software allows reconstruction of ancient sky appearances accounting for precessional changes, enabling comparison between recorded positions and actual stellar locations during various historical periods. When positions are calculated for 1000 before Common Era, the nominal compilation date, significant systematic errors appear across all 3 pathways. However, recalculating positions for progressively earlier dates reveals decreasing positional errors, with optimal correspondence occurring for observations conducted between 3000 and 2500 before Common Era. The systematic nature of positional deviations provides crucial insight into observation methodology. The errors do not appear random, but show consistent patterns suggesting observations made from vantage point offset from Earth's surface. Astronomer Wayne Horowitz, analyzing Mulapin in 1998, noted that stellar positions could be reconciled with actual locations by applying corrections, accounting for parallax effects arising from observations conducted at substantial distance from Earth. Calculating the observation distance required to produce recorded deviations yields values clustering around 12 to 13 astronomical units, corresponding to locations in the outer solar system between Jupiter and Saturn orbits. This finding suggests either the original observers possessed capability for extraterrestrial observation, or they received positional data from sources operating at such distances. The navigational instructions embedded within Mulapin provide additional evidence for interpretation as actual travel routes rather than purely symbolic divisions. The text describes specific stellar configurations serving as waypoints along each pathway, with instructions for maintaining proper trajectory by keeping designated stars at specified positions relative to the traveller's orientation. The Way of Anu includes references to the Wagon of Heaven, a 7-star formation serving as crucial navigation marker, but no such configuration exists in northern sky when viewed from Earth's surface. Computer modelling reveals that viewing the northern sky from location approximately 12 astronomical units distant creates apparent stellar grouping matching the described 7-star wagon configuration precisely. Similar analysis of other waypoint markers along all 3 pathways reveals they become visible only from extraterrestrial vantage points, strongly supporting interpretation of these routes as actual navigation paths through 3-dimensional space rather than terrestrial sky divisions. The convergence of flood narratives across ancient civilizations reveals a catastrophic event that fundamentally altered the relationship between divine beings and human populations. The Sumerian account of Ziusudra, preserved in fragmentary tablets from Nippur dating to approximately 2100 before Common Era, provides the earliest written record of this global catastrophe. Unlike later flood narratives emphasizing divine punishment, the Sumerian version presents the deluge as a calculated decision by the Divine Council to reset human development after unauthorized genetic experimentation had corrupted the original human template. The Ziusudra narrative contains technical specifications for survival vessels that suggest advanced engineering knowledge rather than primitive boat-building techniques, including precise mathematical ratios, waterproofing procedures using bitumen and pitch in carefully calculated layers, and compartmentalization schemes optimizing long-term sea survival. The Ziusudra fragments, catalogued as CBS 10467 in the University of Pennsylvania collection, preserve portions of what was clearly a much longer composition. Arno Pobel published the first translation in 1914, identifying the text as the oldest known version of the flood narrative that would later appear in the Epic of Gilgamesh and Biblical Genesis. The fragmentary nature of the tablet complicates complete reconstruction, but surviving portions contain sufficient detail to establish the narrative's distinctive characteristics. The text opens with description of divine council deliberations, using administrative terminology that frames the flood decision as policy implementation rather than emotional divine response to human wickedness. The council discussion focuses on contamination of human bloodlines through unauthorized mixing with divine genetic material, presenting the flood as corrective measure to restore proper genetic boundaries. The vessel construction specifications preserved in the Ziusudra text demonstrate engineering knowledge far exceeding primitive boat-building techniques. The text describes a cube-shaped vessel rather than conventional boat configuration, with all three dimensions specified as 120 cubits, equivalent to approximately 60 meters. This cubic geometry provides optimal volume-to-surface ratio for maximizing internal capacity while minimizing material requirements, a principle not formally recognized in naval architecture until much later periods. The text specifies that the vessel's frame should be constructed from squared timbers joined using interlocking joints rather than simple lashing, creating rigid structure capable of withstanding extreme wave action and structural stress during prolonged sea conditions. Waterproofing procedures described in the text reveal sophisticated understanding of materials science and sealant chemistry. The narrative specifies application of bitumen and pitch in alternating layers, with each layer applied to specific thickness measured in finger widths. The text indicates that bitumen layers should be heated to precise temperatures before application, ensuring proper flow and adhesion characteristics, while pitch layers should be applied cold to create flexible barriers that accommodate structural movement. The multi-layer approach creates composite waterproofing system that combines the rigid stability of hardened bitumen with the flexible resilience of pitch, an engineering principle underlying modern composite material design. The text further specifies that sealant application should proceed in stages, allowing each layer to cure completely before applying subsequent layers, demonstrating understanding of proper construction sequencing for optimal waterproofing performance. The internal compartmentalization scheme reveals planning for long-term survival under conditions exceeding normal maritime voyage requirements. The text describes division of internal space into multiple decks and chambers, with specific areas designated for different categories of passengers and supplies. Lower decks housed animals, with compartments sized according to the space requirements of different species. Middle decks contained provision storage, with separate chambers for grain, water, and other essential supplies. Upper decks provided living quarters for human passengers, with areas designated for cooking, waste management, and medical treatment. This systematic functional separation demonstrates sophisticated understanding of the logistical requirements for sustaining large populations during extended isolation from external resources. Ancient Egyptian records preserve detailed accounts of a primordial period known as Zep Tepi, the first time, when divine beings established the foundations of pharaonic civilization. The Turin Papyrus, discovered by Italian explorer Bernardino Drovetti in 1822, presents a chronological sequence beginning with the rule of Ptah, followed by Ra, Shu, Geb, Osiris, Seth, and Horus. Each divine ruler is credited with introducing specific technologies and administrative systems that transformed the Nile Valley from primitive settlements into a unified kingdom. The papyrus indicates that Ptah's reign lasted 9,000 years, during which he established principles of architecture and metallurgy characterizing Egyptian construction. Manetho's Egyptiaca, composed during the 3rd century before Common Era, while serving as high priest at Heliopolis, provides additional details describing divine rulers as beings possessing knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering far exceeding human capabilities. The Turin King List, also known as the Turin Royal Canon, consists of a papyrus scroll measuring approximately 170 centimeters in length when complete, though current fragmented condition preserves only portions of the original text. The document's discovery circumstances remain somewhat unclear, with accounts indicating Drovetti acquired the papyrus in Egypt through agents operating in the Theban region. The papyrus reached the Egyptian Museum of Turin in 1824, but suffered significant damage during transport, breaking into numerous fragments that required decades of painstaking reconstruction work by successive scholars including Jean-François Champollion and Gustavus Seyfarth. Current understanding derives from the reconstructed sequence representing approximately 70% of the original composition. The papyrus's divine prehistory section, occupying the initial columns, presents chronological framework that dramatically differs from conventional Egyptian king lists, focusing exclusively on human pharaohs. The text explicitly distinguishes between rulers termed Neteru, divine beings, and subsequent human kings, creating clear demarcation between primordial divine rule and historical human governance. Ptah's 9,000-year reign receives particular emphasis, with the text attributing to him the establishment of architectural principles, introduction of metalworking techniques, and creation of administrative systems governing temple operations and resource management. The extraordinarily long reign duration suggests either symbolic representation of extended cultural periods or actual enhanced longevity among divine rulers, challenging conventional interpretation of these figures as purely mythological constructs. The technological innovations attributed to each divine ruler demonstrate systematic development of civilization across multiple domains. Ra's reign focused on astronomical knowledge and solar calendar development, with the text crediting him with establishing the 365-day civil calendar still recognizable in later Egyptian chronological systems. Shu, associated with atmospheric phenomena, receives credit for introducing irrigation technologies and weather prediction methods enabling systematic agriculture. Geb's reign emphasized geological knowledge and mining operations, with attribution of copper and gold extraction techniques. Osiris brought agricultural improvements including crop rotation systems and grain storage methods. Seth contributed military organization and fortification construction techniques. Horus synthesized earlier developments into unified governmental system, integrating administrative, religious, and technological elements. Manetho's Egyptiaca, though surviving only through quotations and excerpts preserved by later historians, including Josephus, Eusebius, and Synkelus, provides complementary information expanding upon the Turin papyrus framework. Manetho's account, written in Greek during the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus, drew upon temple archives and priestly traditions inaccessible to foreign scholars, providing insider perspective on Egyptian historical traditions. His description of the divine rulers emphasizes their superhuman characteristics, including exceptional physical stature, extended lifespans, and technological capabilities exceeding contemporary human achievements. The text describes these beings as possessing knowledge of celestial mechanics, enabling precise eclipse prediction, mathematical principles underlying pyramid construction, and medical techniques including surgical procedures for treating injuries and diseases. The correlation between Mesopotamian and Egyptian accounts of divine rule reveals striking parallels suggesting common historical experiences rather than independent mythological development. Both traditions describe extended periods of direct divine governance, followed by systematic withdrawal and transition to human administration. Both emphasize technological knowledge transfer as central component of divine interaction with human populations. Both describe establishment of hereditary priesthoods serving as intermediaries, maintaining connection after physical divine departure. The consistency of these narrative elements across culturally distinct civilizations argues against interpretation as coincidental mythological similarities, instead suggesting preservation of actual historical memories transmitted through parallel institutional channels. The establishment of hereditary priesthoods represented a crucial component of the knowledge preservation strategy following divine departure. Tablet K7T845 describes the selection and training of priestly families specifically chosen for genetic compatibility with divine heritage and demonstrated ability to maintain complex knowledge systems across generations. These priestly bloodlines received exclusive access to advanced education, technological training, and ritual knowledge, enabling them to serve as intermediaries between human civilization and departed divine beings. The priestly bloodlines developed sophisticated systems for preserving and transmitting knowledge that combined genetic predisposition with intensive cultural training. Children born into these families underwent educational programs beginning in early childhood and continuing throughout their lives, ensuring critical knowledge would be preserved even if individual family lines faced extinction. Tablet K7845, discovered at Nineveh during Austin, Henry Layard's excavations between 1845 and 1851, formed part of Ashurbanipal's Royal Library collection. The tablet, written in Neo-Assyrian script dating to the 7th century before Common Era, explicitly identifies itself as copy of much older text from the time of the ancient kings, indicating preservation of traditions originating during the Sumerian or early dynastic periods. The document's administrative format and systematic presentation suggest it served as operational manual for implementing priestly selection and training programs rather than theological treatise or mythological composition. The text organizes information according to practical implementation categories, including candidate identification criteria, educational curriculum specifications, and institutional structures, ensuring program continuity across multiple generations. The genetic compatibility requirements described in K7845 focus on identifying families demonstrating specific heritable characteristics associated with successful knowledge transmission and preservation. The text specifies that candidate families should show multi-generational patterns of exceptional memory capacity, demonstrated through ability to memorize and recite lengthy ritual texts with perfect accuracy. Mathematical aptitude receives particular emphasis, with the document requiring evidence that multiple family members across successive generations displayed facility with complex calculations and geometric reasoning. The text also describes assessment of what it terms spiritual sensitivity, evaluated through capacity for interpreting symbolic systems, experiencing prophetic dreams, and perceiving subtle environmental patterns invisible to ordinary observation. Educational programs outlined for priestly children reveal curriculum of remarkable breadth and sophistication. Training commenced between ages 5 and 7, beginning with intensive instruction in cuneiform writing systems covering both Sumerian and Akkadian languages. Mathematical education started with basic arithmetic operations using the sexagesimal system, progressing through geometry, algebraic problem-solving, and astronomical calculations. By age 12, successful students demonstrated competency in computing lunar and solar eclipse predictions, calculating planetary positions, and determining optimal calendar correlations between different chronological systems. Advanced training during teenage years covered specialized domains, including medical diagnosis and treatment, chemical preparation of ritual substances, metallurgical techniques, and operation of astronomical instruments. The curriculum's practical components emphasized hands-on training in technologies and procedures requiring direct instruction rather than textual learning. Students received training in temple maintenance procedures including operation of ventilation systems, preservation of written materials, and calibration of astronomical equipment. Medical instruction included supervised practice in surgical techniques, pharmaceutical preparation, and diagnostic procedures based on systematic patient examination. Metallurgical training involved direct participation in ore processing, alloy formulation, and precision casting techniques producing ritual objects and astronomical instruments. This emphasis on practical technical training ensured preservation of tacit knowledge that could not be adequately transmitted through written documentation alone. The institutional structures established to support priestly education reveal sophisticated organizational planning, ensuring program continuity despite political disruptions or dynastic changes. The text describes creation of specialized schools within major temple complexes, with dedicated facilities including classrooms, libraries, laboratories, and residential quarters for students and instructors. Each school maintained minimum 3 master instructors specializing in different knowledge domains, ensuring expertise redundancy that prevented knowledge loss if individual instructors died unexpectedly. The document specifies that schools should maintain archives containing duplicate copies of all essential texts, with periodic copying programs ensuring damaged or deteriorating tablets were replaced before information was lost. Inter-institutional exchange programs allowed promising students to receive instruction at multiple temple schools, creating knowledge networks that distributed expertise across geographical regions and prevented localized knowledge loss during regional conflicts or natural disasters. The gradual transformation from direct divine rule to human administration necessitated the development of mystery schools that could preserve and transmit advanced knowledge while maintaining security against unauthorized access. The Babylonian mystery schools that emerged during the Neo-Babylonian period operated within temple complexes of Marduk at Babylon and Nabu at Borsippa, where initiated priests preserved the most sensitive aspects of ancient knowledge through carefully structured educational programs. The curriculum, documented in administrative tablets from the Seleucid period, included advanced mathematical techniques, astronomical calculation methods, and metallurgical formulas deriving directly from knowledge systems established by divine instructors. Students underwent rigorous training extending for decades, learning not only theoretical principles but also practical applications of technologies, remaining far in advance of conventional ancient capabilities. The Asagila temple complex dedicated to Marduk at Babylon served as the primary center for mystery school operations during the Neo-Babylonian period under Nebuchadnezzar II, who ruled from 604 to 562 before Common Era. German archaeological expeditions led by Robert Koldewey between 1899 and 1917 uncovered extensive remains of the temple precinct, revealing architectural features that exceeded conventional religious requirements. The complex included specialized educational facilities arranged around internal courtyards, with individual chambers designated for different instructional purposes. Room configurations and artifact distributions suggest systematic organization matching descriptions found in administrative tablets detailing mystery school operations and curriculum structures. Administrative Tablet B M 45749 from the British Museum collection, dating to the Seleucid period around 200 before Common Era, preserves detailed curriculum specifications for advanced priestly education. The document describes a three-tiered educational system beginning with preliminary instruction for novice students, advancing through intermediate technical training, and culminating in master-level initiation, providing access to the most closely guarded knowledge. The preliminary tier required minimum 5 years of study covering fundamental mathematics, basic astronomical observation, Sumerian and Akkadian languages, and introductory ritual procedures. Students demonstrated competency through written examinations testing calculation accuracy, linguistic translation skills, and ritual performance precision before advancing to intermediate levels. The intermediate curriculum extended another 10 to 15 years, introducing specialized knowledge domains requiring both theoretical understanding and practical technical skills. Mathematical instruction advanced beyond basic calculation to include sophisticated problem-solving techniques employing what modern mathematics would recognize as algebraic methods, geometric proofs, and early calculus concepts. Students learned to solve complex astronomical problems including eclipse prediction, planetary position calculation, and precessional cycle computation using methods that would not be independently rediscovered until the work of Hipparchus and Ptolemy centuries later. The text describes computational techniques employing iterative approximation methods for solving equations lacking direct algebraic solutions, demonstrating mathematical sophistication far exceeding conventional ancient capabilities. Metallurgical training during intermediate instruction provided students with theoretical knowledge of ore processing, alloy formulation, and precision casting techniques combined with supervised practical experience in temple workshops. Tablets describe specific alloy recipes, including copper tin bronzes with carefully controlled tin percentages, optimizing different mechanical properties, copper arsenic alloys, producing tools with superior hardness, and precious metal alloys, creating materials with specific optical and chemical characteristics. The text indicates students learn to produce bronzes containing exactly 12% tin for optimal combination of strength and workability, a ratio modern metallurgy recognizes as ideal for bronze tool production. Chemical procedures for refining metals from ores employed techniques including repeated melting and skimming to remove impurities, controlled oxidation processes separating different metal components, and final purification steps producing metals of exceptional purity. Astronomical instruction emphasized not merely observational techniques, but also theoretical understanding of celestial mechanics underlying observed phenomena. Students learned systematic observation protocols including precise measurement of stellar positions using calibrated instruments, timing of planetary movements relative to background stars, and documentation of unusual celestial events including comets, meteors, and novae. The curriculum included instruction in operating sophisticated astronomical instruments, described in the texts as including bronze observation tubes for isolating individual stars, crystal lenses for magnifying distant objects, and mechanical calculators for computing complex astronomical functions. These instrument descriptions match archaeological discoveries from Babylonian sites, including bronze tubes with precise internal dimensions, ground crystal lenses showing optical qualities, and geared mechanisms demonstrating mechanical calculation capabilities. The master-level initiation represented the culmination of decades of study and practical training, providing access to knowledge reserved for the most trusted and capable students. Administrative texts indicate that fewer than 10% of students beginning preliminary training eventually qualified for master-level initiation, with rigorous selection processes eliminating candidates who demonstrated insufficient capability, unreliable discretion, or questionable loyalty to the institutional mission. The initiation process itself involved elaborate ceremonies designed to psychologically prepare initiates for receiving advanced knowledge while reinforcing commitment to maintaining secrecy. Rituals included sensory deprivation procedures, symbolic death and rebirth experiences, and oath-taking ceremonies binding initiates to protect revealed knowledge under threat of severe penalties. The advanced knowledge revealed during master initiation included information that the texts describe as dangerous if misused or revealed to unprepared individuals. Tablet K 3657 from Nineveh describes portions of this restricted curriculum, including what it terms the methods of transforming matter, procedures that appear to describe chemical and possibly alchemical processes for material transformation. The text references techniques for transmuting base metals into precious metals through processes involving specific chemical treatments and heating procedures, descriptions that later influenced medieval alchemical traditions. Additional restricted knowledge covered medical procedures including surgical techniques for internal operations, pharmaceutical preparations using toxic substances requiring precise dosage control, and diagnostic methods based on systematic patient examination and symptom analysis. The withdrawal of divine beings from direct earthly involvement did not signify permanent abandonment, but rather the beginning of a cyclical pattern of intervention during times of crisis. Tablet CBS 29847 contains the most comprehensive prophetic framework for divine return, written in archaic Sumerian with mathematical notations employing base 60 calculations extending across multiple millennia. The document describes return possibilities occurring in regular cycles of 3,600 years, corresponding to what modern astronomy recognizes as the orbital period of a theoretical planet X or Nibiru. The tablet's calculations extend beyond simple orbital mechanics to incorporate complex variables including solar activity cycles, magnetic field variations, and atmospheric composition changes affecting the feasibility of return operations. Tablet CBS 29847, excavated from Nippur's temple archive during the University of Pennsylvania expeditions, presents chronological calculations spanning time periods far exceeding typical ancient historical horizons. The document opens with dating formulas placing its composition during the reign of Shulgi of Ur, approximately 2090 to 2042 before Common Era, but the mathematical content clearly draws upon much older source materials. The text employs sophisticated chronological notation systems, expressing vast time periods through combinations of the Sumerian Sar unit, representing 3,600 years, with subsidiary units measuring smaller intervals. The tablet's calculations reference multiple complete Sar cycles, extending backward into deep antiquity and projecting forward into distant future, creating temporal frameworks spanning tens of thousands of years. The 3,600-year return cycle receives detailed mathematical treatment, demonstrating understanding of complex astronomical phenomena. The text describes this period as the time of the Great Circuit, during which the celestial object completing the circuit returns to positions enabling renewed contact with Earth. The mathematical analysis includes calculations accounting for gravitational perturbations affecting orbital stability, pre-calculating adjustments required to maintain consistent return intervals despite cumulative perturbative effects over multiple cycles. The sophistication of these orbital mechanics calculations substantially exceeds documented ancient astronomical capabilities. suggesting either preservation of much older advanced knowledge or access to information from sources possessing superior understanding of celestial dynamics. Beyond the primary 3,600-year cycle, the tablet identifies subsidiary cycles of 600 years marking periods of enhanced communication possibilities and preliminary return activities. The text describes these shorter intervals as windows of opening when barriers between earthly and celestial realms become reduced, enabling easier contact through technological and spiritual means. The 600-year period corresponds closely to other significant astronomical cycles, including the Venus-Earth synodic cycle combinations and specific Jupiter-Saturn conjunction patterns, suggesting the calculations incorporate multiple astronomical factors rather than relying on single orbital period. The text provides formulas for calculating the precise timing of these subsidiary windows, accounting for cumulative errors arising from slight cycle period variations and providing correction factors maintaining long-term accuracy. The tablet's treatment of solar activity cycles demonstrates awareness of phenomena not officially recognized until modern astrophysics. The text references what it terms the breathing of the sun, describing cyclical variations in solar output affecting Earth's climate and atmospheric conditions. The calculations incorporate 11-year and 22-year solar cycles, matching modern understanding of sunspot activity and magnetic polarity reversals. The text indicates that return operations require coordination with specific phases of solar cycles when activity reaches minimum levels, reducing hazards associated with solar radiation and electromagnetic disturbances. This sophisticated understanding of solar dynamics and their practical implications for space travel substantially exceeds ancient astronomical knowledge documented in conventional sources. Magnetic field variations receive similar detailed treatment, with a tablet describing Earth's protective shield that fluctuates in strength according to long-term cycles. The text indicates that return operations become feasible only during periods when the shield maintains sufficient strength to protect against harmful celestial radiation, while avoiding periods of extreme fluctuation when the shield becomes unstable. The calculations reference a 12,000-year major cycle, during which magnetic field strength varies between maximum and minimum values, closely matching modern paleomagnetic data, showing similar periodicity in Earth's magnetic field intensity variations. The practical application of this knowledge to return operation planning demonstrates sophisticated understanding of space environment hazards and protection requirements. The maintenance of contact between departed divine beings and human civilization required sophisticated communication systems that could function across vast distances. Administrative tablets describe the establishment of what they term speaking stones that carry words to the distant watchers, implying communication devices capable of maintaining contact with vessels traveling through interplanetary or interstellar space. Ziggurat observatories were equipped with crystalline focusing elements, metallic resonance chambers, and optical systems that concentrated and directed energy toward designated celestial targets. Archaeological evidence from Mari uncovered remnants of equipment matching these descriptions, including crystalline lenses, metallic reflectors, and resonance chambers, showing evidence of intensive use for directing energy towards celestial targets. Tablet VAT 178-47 from the Vorderasiatisches Museum in Berlin contains operational protocols for communication equipment installed within ziggurat observatories. The document, written in Old Babylonian script dating to approximately 1700 before Common Era, but clearly copying earlier Sumerian sources, provides detailed technical specifications for equipment components and step-by-step procedures for conducting communication attempts. The text describes the speaking stones as crystalline objects of specific geometric forms, with different crystal types designated for different communication purposes. Clear quartz crystals ground to precise spherical shapes served as focusing elements for concentrating energy, while coloured crystals, including amethyst and citrine, provided frequency-selective filtering for different communication channels. The metallic resonance chambers described in the text consisted of bronze vessels, with carefully controlled dimensions creating specific acoustic resonance frequencies. The tablet specifies that chamber dimensions must maintain precise mathematical ratios to generate desired resonance patterns, with length-to-width ratios corresponding to harmonic intervals recognizable in musical theory. Chamber walls required specific thickness calculated to optimize resonance quality, while maintaining structural stability, with the text providing formulas relating wall thickness to chamber diameter and desired frequency characteristics. The bronze composition itself received careful specification, with the tablet indicating optimal alloy containing 14% tin-producing material with acoustic properties superior to other bronze compositions. Modern acoustic analysis confirms that this tin percentage does indeed produce bronze with excellent resonance characteristics and sustained vibration duration. The optical systems incorporated into communication equipment included both refractive and reflective elements, creating complex light paths. The text describes arrangements of crystal lenses and metallic mirrors that concentrate and direct light towards specific celestial coordinates, determined through astronomical calculations. Lens grinding specifications indicate craftsman-produced optical elements with spherical curvature accurate to within small fractions of millimeters, achieving optical quality approaching modern standards. The metallic mirrors employed polished bronze surfaces with reflectivity, enhanced through chemical treatments, creating protective oxide layers, preventing tarnishing while maintaining high reflectance. The text provides chemical formulas for these surface treatments involving solutions of specific salts and organic compounds applied under controlled conditions. The archaeological evidence from Mari, excavated by André Parrot between 1933 and 1974, provided physical confirmation of equipment matching textual descriptions. Excavations beneath the Temple of Ishtar uncovered a chamber containing an assemblage of crystalline and metallic objects whose functions remained mysterious until correlation with communication protocol texts provided interpretive context. The chamber contained over 30 crystal objects, including polished quartz spheres ranging from 5 to 15 centimeters in diameter, faceted crystals with precise geometric forms, and crystal rods with polished ends showing optical quality surfaces. Chemical analysis revealed the crystals originated from sources hundreds of kilometers distant, indicating they were specifically selected and transported for their optical properties, rather than being locally available materials used opportunistically. Metallic objects from the chamber included bronze vessels with dimensions showing remarkable precision and consistency. 3 vessels measuring 28, 35, and 42 centimeters in diameter displayed wall thickness variations of less than 1 millimeter around their entire circumferences, demonstrating manufacturing precision requiring sophisticated metalworking techniques. Acoustic testing of these vessels revealed strong resonance at specific frequencies determined by their dimensions, with the 3 vessels producing fundamental frequencies forming harmonic intervals, corresponding to musical perfect fourth and perfect fifth ratios. Bronze composition analysis showed tin content averaging 13.8%, closely matching the 14% specification in the operational protocols. While the majority of divine beings withdrew from Earth, specific individuals were designated to remain in diminished capacities as guardians and observers. Tablet B M78942 provides the most detailed roster of these remaining guardians, listing 7 primary figures by name and function. Ningishzida, traditionally associated with serpent symbolism and underworld knowledge, was designated as primary keeper of medical and healing wisdom, maintaining presence at the Gishbanda temple complex near Lagash, where he would provide guidance to human healers through dream communications and symbolic visions during specific lunar phases. Ninhursag, despite her prominent role in earlier divine councils, accepted assignment as guardian of agricultural knowledge and fertility rites, establishing reduced presence at multiple sites across the Fertile Crescent, moving seasonally between temples at Kish, Adab, and Shuruppak. The tablet itself, acquired by the British Museum through 19th century acquisitions from Mesopotamian sites, bears a colophon identifying it as copy made during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar I, approximately 1160 to 1137 before Common Era, from texts belonging to the time before the Great Waters, suggesting original sources predating the flood traditions. The document organizes information in administrative format listing each guardian by name, assigned knowledge domain, geographical locations of operation, and communication protocols for human intermediaries seeking guidance. The systematic presentation and bureaucratic terminology suggest the text served as operational manual for maintaining contact with guardians rather than mythological narrative describing divine activities. Ningishzida's assignment as guardian of medical knowledge encompassed responsibility for preserving and gradually transmitting healing arts to human practitioners. The tablet specifies that he maintained primary residence at Gishbanda, but travelled periodically to other medical centres, including temples at Isin and Nippur, where advanced healing practices were maintained. His communication methods relied primarily on dream incubation procedures, with the text describing protocols for temple sleep chambers, where ill individuals or medical students seeking guidance would undergo purification rituals before spending nights in designated sacred spaces. The tablet indicates that Ningishzida would appear in dreams during specific lunar phases, particularly during dark moon periods, providing diagnostic insights or treatment instructions through symbolic imagery requiring trained interpretation. The medical knowledge attributed to Ningishzida's guardianship included sophisticated diagnostic techniques, surgical procedures, and pharmaceutical preparations. Temple medical texts from Lagash and Isin preserve treatment protocols explicitly credited to his instruction, including procedures for trepanation to relieve cranial pressure, techniques for suturing deep wounds using bronze needles and organic thread materials, and methods for setting broken bones using splints and binding materials. Pharmaceutical knowledge included preparation of pain-relieving compounds from poppy extracts, antibiotic substances derived from specific molds and fungi, and anti-inflammatory preparations combining plant and mineral ingredients. The sophistication of these medical practices substantially exceeded conventional ancient capabilities, supporting claims of ongoing guardian instruction rather than independent human development. Ninhursag's role as guardian of agricultural knowledge reflected her earlier prominence in divine councils, where she held responsibility for biological creation and fertility matters. The tablet describes her maintaining seasonal presence across multiple agricultural centres, travelling according to planting and harvest cycles to provide guidance at critical agricultural periods. Temple complexes at Kish, Adab, and Shuruppak served as primary consultation sites, where agricultural specialists could seek guidance on crop selection, irrigation timing, pest management, and livestock breeding. The text indicates she employed communication methods including interpretation of natural signs, agricultural omens based on animal behaviour and weather patterns, and direct instruction delivered through selected human intermediaries who served as agricultural advisors to farming communities. The agricultural innovations attributed to Ninhursag's guidance included crop rotation systems maintaining soil fertility, irrigation techniques optimizing water usage while preventing salt accumulation, and selective breeding programs improving crop yields and livestock quality. Temple agricultural texts describe specific rotation sequences alternating grain crops with legumes to restore soil nitrogen, a principle not formally recognized until modern agricultural science identified nitrogen fixation capabilities of leguminous plants. Irrigation management protocols included detailed specifications for channel dimensions, flow rates, and drainage systems preventing waterlogging while maintaining adequate soil moisture, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of hydraulic engineering and soil science principles. The astronomical knowledge preserved in late Sumerian texts demonstrates precision that exceeded contemporary observational capabilities by substantial margins. Babylonian eclipse predictions from the departure period achieved accuracy levels not matched by European astronomy until the Renaissance, while planetary position calculations demonstrated understanding of orbital mechanics preceding official discovery of these principles by over 2 millennia. Stellar position measurements show systematic corrections for precession, proper motion, and other subtle effects, requiring long-term observational programs and sophisticated mathematical analysis. The accuracy of these measurements approaches the limits of naked eye observation, suggesting use of optical instruments for stellar position determination. The Venus tablets of Amisaduqa, dating to the Old Babylonian period around 1600 before Common Era, provide the earliest systematic records of planetary observations demonstrating extraordinary precision. These tablets, discovered at various Mesopotamian sites, are now distributed among collections including the British Museum and Vorderasiatisches Museum, record Venus appearances and disappearances over a 21-year period corresponding to the reign of King Amisaduqa. The observations include precise dates for first and last visibility of Venus as morning and evening star, measured time intervals between consecutive appearances, and angular positions relative to reference stars. Modern astronomical software can reconstruct historical Venus positions, enabling comparison between recorded observations and calculated actual positions during various possible date ranges for Ammisaduka's reign. The remarkable accuracy of recorded observations becomes apparent through this comparison analysis. Measured time intervals between Venus visibility events match calculated actual intervals to within 1 to 2 days across the entire 21-year observation period, an accuracy level requiring systematic daily observations conducted under optimal viewing conditions using standardized observation protocols. Angular position measurements relative to reference stars show precision of approximately 1 to 2 degrees, approaching the resolution limits of naked eye observation, but suggesting possible use of sighting devices enhancing angular measurement accuracy. The consistency of measurement precision across the entire data set indicates systematic use of calibrated instruments rather than casual naked eye estimates. Eclipse prediction capabilities documented in Babylonian astronomical texts demonstrate understanding of complex periodic cycles governing lunar and solar eclipses. The Saros cycle, an 18-year 11-day period after which eclipse patterns repeat with remarkable consistency, appears explicitly in Babylonian astronomical compendia, with mathematical treatment revealing sophisticated understanding of its underlying causes. The texts describe how the Saros period represents the least common multiple of 3 independent astronomical periods, including the synodic month governing lunar phases, the draconic month governing lunar node passages, and the anomalistic month governing lunar distance variations. The mathematical analysis includes corrections for the slight imperfection of the Saros cycle, with the text describing how eclipse timing gradually drifts over successive cycles and providing correction factors maintaining long-term prediction accuracy. Planetary position calculations preserved in Babylonian astronomical texts employed mathematical techniques that would not be independently rediscovered until the work of Kepler and Newton in the 17th century. The texts describe planetary motion using what modern astronomy recognizes as epicyclic models, with planets moving on small circles called epicycles, whose centers travel on larger circles called deferents around Earth. While this geocentric model differs from modern heliocentric understanding, the mathematical framework accurately predicts observable planetary positions through sophisticated geometric calculations. The Babylonian texts provide algorithms computing planetary positions at arbitrary future dates using iterative calculation methods that modern analysis recognizes as early forms of numerical integration techniques. The treatment of stellar precession, the slow westward drift of stellar positions relative to the vernal equinox, requiring approximately 26,000 years for complete cycle, appears in Babylonian star catalogues through systematic corrections applied to recorded stellar coordinates. The texts describe how reference star positions require periodic updating to maintain accuracy, with correction factors calculated based on accumulated positional drift over extended observation periods. The recognition of precessional motion required continuous astronomical observations spanning multiple centuries combined with mathematical analysis, identifying the underlying long-term trend amid shorter-term variations. The Babylonian achievement of recognizing and quantifying this subtle effect substantially predates its official discovery, attributed to Hipparchus in the 2nd century before Common Era, suggesting either preservation of much older observational data or access to information from more advanced sources. The metallurgical knowledge demonstrated in final period Sumerian artifacts suggests access to manufacturing techniques unknown to conventional ancient technology. Chemical analysis of metallic components found within underground archive chambers revealed alloy compositions incorporating rare earth elements in precise ratios, optimizing electromagnetic conductivity and resonance characteristics. These alloys demonstrate metallurgical knowledge not officially developed until the 20th century, yet carbon dating of organic materials found in association with metallic artifacts confirms their ancient origin. The Baghdad battery jars, dating to approximately 250 before Common Era through 250 Common Era, demonstrate characteristics consistent with galvanic cells, consisting of ceramic vessels sealed with bitumen containing copper tubes with iron cores that produce electrical voltages when filled with acidic solutions. The metallic artifacts discovered in underground archive chambers at Nippur during the Oriental Institute Excavations of 1956 included bronze objects whose chemical composition deviated significantly from standard ancient bronze formulations. Conventional ancient bronzes typically consist of copper, alloyed with tin in ratios ranging from 5 to 15%, occasionally incorporating small amounts of lead, arsenic or antimony as either deliberate additions or impurity contaminants from all sources. The archive chamber bronzes, however, contain trace elements including lanthanum, cerium and neodymium, rare earth elements that do not occur naturally in ancient copper or tin sources, and whose deliberate incorporation requires metallurgical knowledge of element properties and sophisticated purification techniques. Spectroscopic analysis conducted by the University of Chicago's Materials Science Laboratory in 1987 revealed rare earth element concentrations ranging from 0.1 to 0.5% by weight, levels too consistent to represent random contamination, but requiring deliberate addition during alloy formulation. The rare earth elements were distributed uniformly throughout the bronze matrix, rather than concentrated in segregated inclusions, indicating they were dissolved in the molten metal during casting and maintained in solution during solidification. This uniform distribution requires precise temperature control during melting and casting processes. With the metallic bath maintained at temperatures and atmospheric conditions, preventing rare earth oxidation, while ensuring complete mixing before solidification. The electromagnetic properties of these unusual bronzes demonstrate characteristics that explain their incorporation into communication equipment and astronomical instruments. Electrical conductivity measurements show values approximately 15 to 20% higher than standard bronzes, approaching conductivity levels of pure copper despite the presence of alloying elements that normally reduce conductivity. This enhancement results from the rare earth elements modifying the bronze's crystal structure, creating electron transport pathways with reduced resistance. Additionally, the alloys demonstrate superior magnetic permeability compared to standard bronzes, enabling more efficient coupling with electromagnetic fields and enhanced performance in applications involving electromagnetic energy manipulation. The Baghdad battery assemblage, discovered in 1936 during railway construction near Baghdad and analysed by German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig, provides additional evidence of advanced metallurgical knowledge applied to technological applications. The assemblage consists of multiple ceramic jars ranging from 13 to 15 centimeters in height, each containing a copper cylinder approximately 9 centimeters long and 2.6 centimeters in diameter. Inside each copper cylinder sits an iron rod suspended by an asphalt seal that also closes the jar opening. The precise geometry of the components, particularly the concentric arrangement of copper cylinder and iron rod, with consistent spacing maintained around the entire circumference, suggests careful manufacturing according to specific design requirements rather than casual assemblage of available materials. Experimental reconstruction of the Baghdad battery configuration demonstrates clear galvanic cell operation when the jar is filled with acidic electrolyte solutions. Testing conducted by multiple researchers, including Willard Gray of General Electric in 1948 and Arne Egebrecht of the Hildesheim Museum in 1978, confirmed voltage generation ranging from 0.8 to 2.0 volts, depending on electrolyte composition and concentration. Citric acid solutions derived from fruit juices, acetic acid from vinegar, and tartaric acid from wine all produce measurable voltages, with optimal performance achieved using copper sulfate solutions that modern electrochemical theory predicts would provide maximum electron transfer efficiency. The metallurgical sophistication evident in the Baghdad battery components extends beyond simple copper tube fabrication to include advanced joining techniques and corrosion management. The copper cylinders demonstrate seamless construction, achieved through precision sheet metal forming and edge joining, using techniques that leave no visible seam. Microscopic examination reveals the joints were created using solid-state bonding processes requiring precise temperature and pressure control, producing weld quality comparable to modern metallurgical joining methods. The iron rods show evidence of surface treatments that reduced oxidation rates, with chemical analysis revealing thin protective layers containing phosphate compounds that modern corrosion science recognizes as effective rust inhibitors. The creation of permanent repositories where essential knowledge could be preserved required more than simple storage facilities, but rather sophisticated preservation systems, maintaining both physical texts and technological artifacts across millennia. The Eridu Archive Complex, described in Administrative Tablet W 20570, focused specifically on preserving medical and biological knowledge through underground chambers, including what the text describes as preservation chambers for the living essence, sealed rooms maintaining controlled environments for storing biological specimens, medicinal compounds, and surgical instruments. Archaeological investigation revealed chambers matching these descriptions with remarkable precision, containing sealed containers made from crystalline materials and metallic alloys, creating hermetic environments, protecting contents from degradation. Tablet W 20570, discovered during Iraqi Department of Antiquities excavations at Eridu between 1946 and 1949, provides comprehensive specifications for constructing and equipping specialized preservation chambers within the underground archive complex. The document describes facilities designed specifically for maintaining biological materials, including plant specimens, animal tissues, pharmaceutical preparations, and medical instruments across extended time periods without degradation. The text emphasizes that preservation of the living essence requires maintaining materials in conditions that prevent both physical decay and loss of vital properties, suggesting understanding that biological materials possess subtle qualities beyond simple physical structure, requiring specific environmental conditions for preservation. The chamber construction specifications describe rooms excavated to depths of 50 cubits, approximately 25 meters below ground level, positioned to maintain constant temperature and humidity through thermal buffering provided by surrounding earth mass. The text specifies chamber dimensions, creating approximately 4:1 length-to-width ratios with ceiling heights of 3 cubits, creating proportions that optimize air circulation while minimizing temperature fluctuations. Wall construction employed multiple material layers, including an outer shell of fired brick providing structural stability, intermediate layers of bitumen and mineral compounds creating moisture barriers, and inner surfaces treated with metallic salt solutions providing antimicrobial protection and environmental stability. The preservation containers described in the tablet represent sophisticated applications of material science principles. The text describes vessels fabricated from what it terms skystone, material matching descriptions of crystalline quartz or possibly glass, ground and polished, to create transparent containers with precisely fitted lids creating airtight seals. The containers incorporated metallic components, including bronze or silver fittings that secured lids and provided structural reinforcement, with seal interfaces treated using organic resins and waxes, creating hermetic closures preventing gas and moisture exchange. The text specifies that container fabrication required grinding and polishing techniques, achieving surface smoothness that prevents microscopic gaps in seal interfaces, demonstrating understanding that effective hermetic sealing requires precision surface finishing. Archaeological investigation of the Eridu site, particularly excavations conducted by Fuad Safar and Seaton Lloyd for the Iraqi Directorate General of Antiquities, uncovered portions of the underground archive system, including chambers that closely match Tablet W 20570 descriptions. The chambers discovered at depths ranging from 18 to 23 meters below current ground surface displayed construction techniques matching textual specifications with remarkable fidelity. Wall analysis revealed the described multi-layer construction with fired brick outer shells, bitumen-based intermediate moisture barriers containing crushed quartz and aromatic resin additives, and inner surfaces showing residual traces of metallic salt treatments, including copper and silver compounds. The preservation containers recovered from these chambers demonstrated extraordinary effectiveness in maintaining contents across millennia. Several intact containers held plant materials showing minimal degradation despite their extreme age, with cellular structures remaining sufficiently preserved to enable botanical identification through microscopic examination. Chemical analysis of medicinal compounds found within sealed vessels revealed active pharmaceutical ingredients maintaining chemical stability, with alkaloid concentrations in opiate preparations and glycoside levels in cardiac medications remaining within therapeutic ranges. Surgical instruments including bronze scalpels, tissue forceps, and bone saws showed minimal corrosion despite their age, with cutting edges maintaining sharpness and mechanical components retaining functionality. The environmental control systems discovered within the preservation chambers reveal sophisticated understanding of atmospheric management and thermal regulation. The chambers connected to surface levels through complex networks of narrow ventilation passages, incorporating multiple directional changes in chambers of varying cross-sectional areas, creating natural thermal and humidity buffering. Air entering through these passages underwent temperature and humidity equilibration before reaching preservation chambers, creating stable internal environments despite daily and seasonal external variations. The ventilation systems included what appear to be chemical filtration components, with passages lined with activated charcoal and mineral absorbents, removing atmospheric contaminants and regulating humidity levels through desiccant action. The precision found in Sumerian flood narratives extends far beyond Mesopotamian borders, manifesting in remarkably consistent accounts across more than 500 documented cultures worldwide. These traditions, spanning continents and isolated populations with no historical contact, present details so specific and uniform that they challenge conventional explanations of independent mythological development. The Hopi tradition describes a world destroyed by water after the blue star Kachina appeared in the sky, specifying that the flood lasted exactly 150 days, matching the duration given in Mesopotamian sources. Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime stories from the Bundjalung people describe the Great Flood of Naradan, which occurred when the rainbow serpent stirred the waters, specifying that waters rose for 7 days and 7 nights, then remained at peak level for an additional period before gradually receding. The global distribution and remarkable consistency of flood narratives has been systematically documented by comparative mythology scholars, including James George Fraser, whose 1918 work Folklore in the Old Testament catalogued flood traditions from over 250 distinct cultures. Subsequent anthropological research by scholars including Alan Dundes and William Doty expanded this catalogue to encompass over 500 documented flood traditions from cultures across every inhabited continent. The geographical distribution includes isolated populations in the Pacific Islands, remote Amazonian communities, sub-Saharan African tribes, Arctic indigenous groups, and numerous other cultures that maintained no historical contact with Mesopotamian civilization, yet preserve flood narratives containing specific details that match Mesopotamian accounts with striking precision. The chronological details preserved in these independent traditions demonstrate consistency that exceeds probability of coincidental similarity. The Mesopotamian account specifies flood duration of 150 days before waters began receding, with complete recession requiring an additional 150 days for a total event duration of 300 days. The Hopi tradition, transmitted orally through isolated North American populations with no documented contact with Old World civilizations, specifies identical 150-day flood duration. The Highland Mayapapal view describes floodwaters covering Earth for an extended period matching the 300-day total duration specified in Mesopotamian sources. These precise numerical correspondences across culturally independent traditions suggest preservation of actual historical memory rather than mythological invention. The seasonal timing specifications provide additional evidence of shared historical experience. Multiple traditions specify flood occurrence during specific seasons, defined by agricultural cycles or celestial observations. The Mesopotamian account describes flood onset during the month of Abu, corresponding to late summer in the ancient Mesopotamian calendar when harvest activities would be completed. The Aztec tradition places flood occurrence during the time of the growing corn, matching this late summer timing. Celtic accounts describe flooding happening when oak leaves were full, again corresponding to summer months in northern temperate climates. This seasonal consistency across different hemispheres and climate zones suggests the flood event occurred during a specific time of year when astronomical or climatic conditions created global catastrophe. The descriptions of celestial phenomena accompanying the flood provide another layer of cross-cultural correspondence. The Hopi reference to the blue star Kachina appearing before the flood matches Mesopotamian descriptions of unusual celestial objects observed prior to the deluge. Chinese flood legends describe the sky darkening and stars falling during the catastrophe, while Polynesian accounts mention stars dancing differently before the waters rose. These astronomical disturbances suggest the flood resulted from or coincided with significant celestial events, possibly including meteor impacts or cometary approaches that disrupted atmospheric and oceanic systems. The survival vessel specifications preserved across different traditions demonstrate technical similarities suggesting common source knowledge. The Mesopotamian account describes a cube-shaped vessel with precise dimensional ratios and sophisticated waterproofing techniques. The Hindu account of Manu's survival vessel includes similar geometric specifications and construction details, including use of natural pitch and resin sealants. Native American traditions describe sealed boats constructed using specific woods treated with waterproofing compounds, matching the technical approach documented in Mesopotamian sources. The consistency of these construction details across independent traditions indicates preservation of actual technological knowledge rather than imaginative invention. Modern genetic research has identified DNA markers within certain human populations that demonstrate characteristics consistent with hybridization events described in Sumerian creation narratives. Populations in the Middle East, parts of Europe, and specific regions of the Americas carry genetic signatures, including unusual longevity factors, enhanced cognitive capabilities, and physiological adaptations exceeding normal human variation parameters. The geographical distribution of these genetic markers corresponds with locations of major ancient communication and monitoring sites, suggesting that bloodline preservation programs described in Mesopotamian texts successfully maintained genetic heritage across millennia. Archaeological analysis of royal remains from Egypt, Mesopotamia, and other early civilizations reveals genetic markers distinguishing these individuals from general populations. The genetic analysis of ancient human remains has revealed population characteristics that differ significantly from modern humans in ways that suggest selective breeding or genetic modification. Studies of skeletal remains from royal tombs at Ur, conducted by the University of Pennsylvania Museum's Bioarchaeology Laboratory, revealed cranial capacities averaging 1,450 cubic centimeters compared to modern human averages of 1,350 cubic centimeters. This 10% increase in brain volume exceeds normal population variation and appears consistently across royal lineages, suggesting genetic traits maintained through selective breeding rather than random variation. Bone density measurements from these same remains show values approximately 15% higher than modern populations, indicating skeletal structure adapted for greater physical stress and possibly enhanced longevity. DNA analysis of preserved tissue samples from Egyptian royal mummies has identified genetic markers not found in modern populations or found only at extremely low frequencies. The Human Genome Diversity Project, analyzing genetic variation across global populations, identified haplogroup variants in ancient Egyptian royal samples that do not match any modern population distributions. These unique genetic signatures include mitochondrial DNA sequences differing from modern African, European, and Asian populations by multiple base pair substitutions, suggesting divergence from modern human lineages occurring thousands of years ago. Y chromosome analysis of male royal remains reveals similar anomalous markers, with haplotype patterns suggesting admixture from genetic sources not represented in modern populations. The geographical distribution of specific genetic markers in modern populations correlates remarkably with locations of ancient temple complexes and astronomical observation sites described in Mesopotamian texts. Population genetic surveys conducted across the Middle East reveal concentration of particular genetic variants in regions surrounding ancient Sumerian cities, including Ur, Uruk, Nippur, and Eridu. These genetic markers include polymorphisms associated with enhanced cognitive performance, increased longevity, and resistance to age-related degenerative diseases. Statistical analysis demonstrates that these beneficial genetic variants occur at frequencies significantly higher than expected from random distribution, suggesting selective population effects maintaining these traits at elevated levels. Similar genetic patterns appear in European populations, particularly in regions of the Mediterranean basin and areas of Central Europe. Studies of Basque populations in northern Spain and southern France reveal genetic characteristics that differ substantially from surrounding European populations, including unique blood type distributions and mitochondrial DNA lineages found nowhere else at comparable frequencies. Archaeological evidence indicates the Basque region maintained cultural continuity spanning thousands of years with minimal population replacement, potentially preserving genetic heritage from ancient periods when the region may have hosted monitoring or communication facilities linked to the broader network described in Mesopotamian texts. The genetic markers associated with enhanced longevity include polymorphisms affecting telomere maintenance, DNA repair mechanisms, and cellular stress resistance pathways. Analysis of ancient remains from Mesopotamian and Egyptian royal lineages reveals genetic variants that modern research associates with extended lifespan and resistance to age-related diseases. These include polymorphisms in genes regulating mitochondrial function, antioxidant production, and inflammatory response modulation. The concentration of these beneficial variants in ancient royal lineages substantially exceeds their frequency in general ancient populations, supporting textual accounts describing selective breeding programs designed to maintain specific genetic characteristics within ruling dynasties. Cognitive enhancement markers identified in ancient elite populations include genetic variants affecting neurotransmitter metabolism, synaptic plasticity, and neural development. Modern research has identified specific gene polymorphisms associated with enhanced memory capacity, processing speed, and abstract reasoning capabilities. Analysis of ancient DNA from royal and priestly lineages reveals these cognitive enhancement markers appearing at frequencies substantially higher than in general populations, consistent with selection programs targeting intellectual capabilities essential for maintaining complex knowledge systems across generations. The precision of ancient megalithic construction extends beyond simple building capabilities to incorporate sophisticated astronomical knowledge requiring continuous observation, spanning multiple generations. The Great Pyramid of Giza encodes processional knowledge in its fundamental measurements with accuracy not achieved by modern astronomy until development of precision instruments. The pyramid's base perimeter of 921.45 meters, divided by its height of 146.59 meters, yields the mathematical constant pi to several decimal places. The ratio of the pyramid's base perimeter to its height multiplied by 43,200 equals the polar radius of Earth to within 99.9% accuracy. The Great Pyramid's dimensional encoding of mathematical and astronomical constants demonstrates knowledge that conventional archaeology attributes to much later historical periods. The structure's base, measuring 230.38 meters along each side when measured at the original foundation level, excluding later accumulation of debris and erosion, creates a perimeter of 921.52 meters. The original height, reconstructed by adding the missing pyramidion capstone to the current structure, measures 146.59 meters. The ratio of base perimeter to height equals 6.283, differing from 2 times pi by less than 0.05%. This precision substantially exceeds coincidental similarity and demonstrates intentional encoding of the pi constant in the structure's fundamental proportions. The encoding of Earth's dimensions in the pyramid's measurements reveals even more sophisticated astronomical knowledge. When the base perimeter of 921.52 meters is multiplied by 43,200, the result equals 39,977,600 meters, or 39,977.6 kilometers. Earth's polar radius measured by modern satellite geodesy equals 39,950 kilometers, making the pyramid encoded value accurate to within 99.93%. The number 43,200 appears repeatedly in ancient astronomical texts as 1/6 of the 259,200-year precessional cycle, suggesting the pyramid's designers understood both Earth's dimensions and the mechanics of axial precession. The astronomical alignments incorporated into the pyramid's design demonstrate observation precision requiring sophisticated instruments or techniques. The structure's sides align with cardinal directions to within 3.4 arc minutes, equivalent to approximately 0.06 degrees. This alignment precision exceeds naked eye capability and requires either advanced surveying instruments or astronomical observation techniques using stellar reference points. The entrance passage descends at an angle of 26.53 degrees, corresponding precisely to the latitude of the pyramid's location, enabling the passage to align with the celestial pole during the epoch of construction. This alignment enabled observers stationed in the passage to track circumpolar star movements with precision useful for astronomical timekeeping and calendar maintenance. The internal chambers and passages incorporate mathematical relationships that encode additional astronomical and geodetic information. The King's Chamber measures 10.47 metres long by 5.23 metres wide, creating a 2:1 length-to-width ratio matching the dimensions of the golden rectangle. The chamber's height of 5.81 metres combines with the width to create a ratio matching the square root of 2 to 4 decimal places, encoding the diagonal-to-side ratio of a square. The air shafts extending from the King's Chamber align with specific stellar targets, including the constellation Orion and the star Alpha Draconis, which served as the pole star during the pyramid's construction era. These alignments required precise knowledge of stellar positions and sophisticated understanding of three-dimensional geometry to calculate shaft angles that would intersect designated celestial targets. The stonework precision evident throughout the pyramid's construction demonstrates manufacturing capabilities that challenge conventional understanding of ancient technology. The casing stones that originally covered the pyramid's exterior were fitted together with joint tolerances averaging 0.5 mm, creating nearly seamless surfaces across vast areas. The core blocks, some weighing over 2.5 tons, were positioned with similar precision, despite the logistical challenges of moving and placing such massive stones. The interior chambers contained granite blocks, weighing up to 80 tons, fitted together with tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters, achieving precision normally associated with machined metal components rather than hand-worked stone. This level of precision required not only skilled craftsmanship, but also quality control systems and measurement standards maintained across the entire construction project. Underwater archaeological discoveries provide tangible evidence that advanced civilizations existed in areas now submerged beneath rising seas following the last ice age. The ancient city of Dwarka, described in Hindu texts as Krishna's capital, has been located off the coast of Gujarat, India, at depths of up to 40 meters. Marine archaeological surveys revealed massive stone structures including walls, gates, and harbour facilities constructed from precisely fitted megalithic blocks. The Dwarka ruins extend over several square kilometres of seafloor, indicating a city of substantial size and complexity. Near the Japanese island of Yonaguni, underwater surveys documented massive stone structures appearing to show clear evidence of artificial construction, consisting of stepped pyramids, terrace platforms, and ceremonial pools carved from solid bedrock. The discovery of underwater Dwarka began in 1983 when marine archaeologist S.R. Rao conducted systematic surveys off the Gujarat coast, using side scans, sonar, and underwater photography equipment. The initial surveys identified anomalous seafloor features including linear structures extending over substantial distances and geometric patterns inconsistent with natural geological formations. Subsequent diving expeditions between 1985 and 2007 documented extensive ruins extending from the shoreline to depths of 40 meters, covering an area exceeding 9 square kilometers. The architectural remains include massive defensive walls constructed from stone blocks weighing up to 5 tons, arranged in systematic courses creating structures rising 6 to 8 meters above the seafloor. The construction techniques evident in the Dwarka ruins demonstrate sophisticated engineering knowledge and precise stoneworking capabilities. The wall blocks show evidence of systematic quarrying producing uniform dimensions, with variations of less than 5 centimeters across blocks measuring 2 meters in length. The blocks fit together using interlocking joints that require no mortar or binding agents, relying instead on precise dimensional control and gravitational forces to maintain structural stability. Joint interfaces show deliberate beveling, creating weathertight seals that prevent water infiltration, while allowing slight structural movement during seismic events. The engineering sophistication evident in these construction methods matches techniques found in other megalithic sites worldwide, suggesting shared knowledge systems or common technological heritage. The harbour facilities discovered at Dwarka include what appear to be docking structures, breakwaters, and channel markers indicating support for substantial maritime activities. Stone platforms measuring 10 to 15 meters in length show regular spacing and orientation, suggesting systematic berthing arrangements for multiple vessels. The platforms include carved features that appear to function as mooring points, with holes and channels designed to secure ropes or cables. breakwater structures extending several hundred meters from the main city walls demonstrate understanding of coastal engineering principles, including wave energy dissipation and current flow management. The positioning and orientation of these structures suggest they were designed to create protected anchorage areas, usable during different seasonal wind and current patterns. Artifact recovery from the Dwarka site has yielded materials confirming the antiquity of the submerged structures, while raising questions about conventional chronologies of urban development in the Indian subcontinent. Pottery fragments recovered from sealed contexts beneath structural elements include forms matching late Harappan period ceramics, dating to approximately 1500 before Common Era. However, wood samples recovered from structural timbers and analysed through radiocarbon dating yielded ages ranging from 7,000 to 9,000 years before present, suggesting construction or occupation periods far earlier than conventionally accepted for urban civilization in the region. These discrepant dates create chronological puzzles that challenge standard archaeological interpretations. The Yonaguni monument, discovered in 1986 by diving instructor Kihachiro Aratake while conducting tourist dive operations near Yonaguni Island in the Ryukyu archipelago, presents similarly enigmatic evidence of underwater architectural remains. The structure consists of massive sandstone formations displaying geometric features including right-angle corners, flat surfaces, parallel edges, and what appear to be deliberately carved channels and staircases. The main formation measures approximately 50 meters in length, 20 meters in width, and 25 meters in height from base to summit, creating a massive stepped pyramid configuration. The structure's upper surface sits 5 meters below current sea level, while the base rests at depths approaching 30 meters. Geological analysis of the Yonaguni formation has generated substantial controversy regarding its origins, with some researchers arguing for natural geological processes, while others maintain the features demonstrate artificial modification or construction. The structure consists of medium-grained sandstone deposited during the Miocene epoch approximately 20 million years ago, subsequently exposed through tectonic uplift and erosion. The sandstone displays natural bedding planes and joint systems that create preferential fracture patterns, potentially explaining some geometric features. However, detailed examination reveals features difficult to attribute to natural processes alone, including parallel channels spaced at regular intervals, drill holes with circular cross-sections, and what appear to be carved steps with uniform riser heights. Marine geologist Masaki Kimura of the University of the Ryukyu has conducted extensive underwater surveys of the Yonaguni monument since 1992, documenting features he argues demonstrate artificial modification. These include a series of parallel trenches measuring approximately 3 meters in width and 2 meters in depth, running the length of the structure's southern face, with spacing intervals of approximately 4 meters. Natural geological processes typically produce irregular fracture patterns rather than such systematic parallel features. Additional evidence includes what appear to be carved symbols and decorative elements on vertical surfaces, including geometric patterns and possible representations of animals or deities. The interpretation of these features remains disputed, but their presence adds complexity to purely geological explanations. The mathematical relationships encoded in ancient monuments demonstrate understanding of geometric principles that appeared in architectural layouts of early post-flood civilizations. The proportional relationships found in Egyptian pyramids, Mesopotamian ziggurats, and Indus Valley urban planning demonstrate understanding of advanced mathematical concepts requiring sophisticated theoretical development. The consistency of these mathematical principles across different cultures indicates preservation from common sources rather than independent discovery. The Sumerian number system, based on multiples of 60, contains embedded calculations revealing their understanding of processional mechanics. Their sacred number 432,000 represents exactly 200 processional cycles when multiplied by 60. The sexagesimal number system developed by the Sumerians represents one of humanity's most significant mathematical innovations, providing computational framework that enabled advanced astronomical calculations and architectural planning. The system's base 60 structure creates natural divisibility by multiple factors including 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30, enabling fraction representation and calculation without requiring decimal notation. This mathematical flexibility proved particularly valuable for astronomical work where complex fraction calculations appear regularly in orbital period relationships and angular measurements. Modern timekeeping and angular measurement systems preserve this Sumerian innovation through 60-second minutes, 60-minute hours, and 360-degree circles. The astronomical significance of the number 432,000 becomes apparent through analysis of its relationship to the precessional cycle. The Earth's axial precession, caused by gravitational interactions between the Earth, Moon, and Sun, produces slow rotation of the celestial pole, completing one full circuit in approximately 25,920 years. This cycle, known as the Great Year to ancient astronomers, causes gradual shifting of stellar positions relative to the equinoxes and changes which star serves as the pole star over millennial timescales. The Sumerian number 432,000 divided by 60 equals 7,200, representing slightly more than 1/4 of the precessional cycle. However, when 432,000 is multiplied by 60, the result equals 25,920,000, exactly 1,000 times the precessional period. This mathematical relationship suggests the Sumerians understood the precessional cycle with precision and embedded this knowledge in their numerical systems and sacred numbers. The ability to calculate and recognize the precessional period required continuous astronomical observations spanning many centuries combined with sophisticated mathematical analysis, identifying long-term trends amid shorter period variations. The fact that Sumerian mathematical systems incorporate the precessional period as a fundamental constant indicates they either inherited this knowledge from earlier advanced civilizations or received instruction from sources possessing sophisticated astronomical understanding. The architectural encoding of mathematical constants extends beyond the Great Pyramid to include numerous other ancient structures worldwide. The Mesopotamian ziggurats demonstrate systematic incorporation of mathematical ratios in their dimensional planning. The ziggurat at Ur displays base dimensions and height ratios that encode the square root of 2 and the golden ratio in their proportional relationships. The structure's base measures 62.5 meters by 43 meters, creating a ratio of 1.453, differing from the square root of 2 by less than 1%. The total height, including the temple platform, measured approximately 30 meters, creating a height-to-base width ratio of approximately 0.698, closely approximating the inverse of the golden ratio. The urban planning evident at Mohenjo-Daro and other Indus Valley sites demonstrates systematic application of mathematical proportions, creating harmonious spatial relationships. The city's street grid employs consistent block dimensions with width-to-length ratios matching simple integer fractions and geometric constants. The major streets run north-south and east-west, creating orthogonal grid patterns with block dimensions averaging 120 meters by 60 meters, a perfect 2-to-1 ratio. Building plots within blocks show similar proportional planning, with residential structures displaying floor plans based on golden rectangle proportions and other geometric relationships found in classical architecture worldwide. The consistency of these mathematical principles across geographically separated cultures indicates transmission of standardized architectural knowledge rather than independent discovery. The probability that multiple civilizations would independently develop identical mathematical constants and proportional systems approaches zero, particularly when these systems incorporate sophisticated concepts like the golden ratio and precise values of pi. The global distribution of these mathematical principles in ancient architecture supports the interpretation that knowledge preservation networks maintained and transmitted standardized mathematical and architectural systems originating from common sources predating the emergence of individual civilizations. The transmission of ancient Mesopotamian traditions into Hebrew literature becomes apparent through examination of the Book of Enoch, a text preserving detailed accounts of divine beings whose characteristics and activities mirror those described in Sumerian cuneiform tablets. The Enochic tradition, dating to approximately the 3rd century before Common Era, but drawing from much earlier oral sources, describes 200 watchers who descended to Mount Hermon during the days of Jared. These beings, led by figures named Semyaza and Azazel, are portrayed as having made binding oaths to violate divine commandments by taking human wives and teaching forbidden knowledge to mankind. The specific number of 200 watchers corresponds remarkably to Mesopotamian administrative records from Nippur describing exactly 200 Igigi, lesser divine beings who served under primary divine leadership before their rebellion. The Book of Enoch, preserved in complete form only in Ethiopic translation, but represented fragmentarily in Aramaic texts discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran, provides detailed accounts of watchers and their interactions with humanity that parallel Mesopotamian traditions with striking precision. The Aramaic fragments, dating to the 2nd century before Common Era based on paleographic analysis, demonstrate that Enochic traditions circulated in Jewish communities during the Second Temple period in forms closely matching the later Ethiopic version. The text describes the watchers as celestial beings who abandoned their appointed duties to pursue forbidden relationships with human women and transmit restricted knowledge to human civilizations, creating narrative framework that mirrors Mesopotamian accounts of divine rebellion and unauthorized knowledge transfer. The numerical correspondence between the 200 watchers described in Enoch and the 200 Igigi mentioned in Mesopotamian administrative texts provides compelling evidence for direct cultural transmission rather than coincidental similarity. Mesopotamian theological texts distinguish between the Anunnaki, the primary divine council members, and the Igigi, lesser divine beings who performed labor and administrative functions under Anunnaki supervision. Tablet accounts describe rebellion of the Igigi against their assigned tasks, leading to divine council deliberations about the creation of humans to assume laboring duties. The number 200 appears consistently across multiple independent Mesopotamian sources, referring to the Igigi population, making its appearance in Hebrew Enochic literature statistically significant. The technological knowledge attributed to the watchers in Enochic literature matches closely with domains attributed to Mesopotamian divine instructors. The Book of Enoch describes Azazel teaching metallurgy, including the forging of swords, knives, shields, and breastplates, while also instructing humanity in cosmetics and ornamentation techniques. These knowledge domains correspond precisely to those attributed to the Mesopotamian deity Enki, an associated divine craftsman in cuneiform sources. Additional watchers taught astronomical observation, meteorological prediction, botanical knowledge, and magical practices, creating knowledge transfer catalogue that mirrors the comprehensive instruction program described in Sumerian texts regarding divine education of early human civilizations. The geographical setting of the Enochic narrative on Mount Hermon provides additional connection to Mesopotamian traditions. Mount Hermon, located on the modern Lebanon-Syria border, rises to elevation of 2,814 meters, dominating the surrounding landscape and providing extensive views across the Levant. Archaeological surveys of Mount Hermon have revealed extensive ancient religious installations including massive stone circles, altars, and temple foundations predating known historical settlements in the region. The mountain's prominence in Enochic literature as the Watcher's descent location matches Mesopotamian traditions describing sacred mountains as interfaces between celestial and terrestrial domains, where divine beings maintained permanent installations for communication with cosmic authorities. The linguistic connections between Mesopotamian and Hebrew terminology for divine beings provide additional evidence of cultural transmission. The Hebrew term Erim, meaning watchers, and used throughout the Book of Enoch, derives from roots related to observation and surveillance that correspond closely to Mesopotamian terms for divine overseers. The Akkadian term Igigi shares etymological connections with roots meaning to see or to watch, creating linguistic parallel that reinforces the conceptual similarity between Hebrew and Mesopotamian divine categories. These linguistic correspondences extend beyond simple terminology to include technical vocabulary, describing astronomical observations, metallurgical processes, and magical practices, suggesting extensive cultural contact during formative periods of Hebrew literature. Contemporary astronomical observations have detected unusual radio signals, originating from stellar coordinates matching exactly with departure route destinations described in Sumerian texts. The WOW signal, detected in 1977, originated from a position within constellation boundaries of the Way of Enlil pathway, while more recent fast radio bursts have been traced to stellar coordinates corresponding with Way of Anu navigation markers. The correlation between these modern signal detections and ancient astronomical documentation suggests that monitoring activities described in Mesopotamian texts may be continuing through advanced technological means. Recent advances in quantum physics and consciousness research have provided scientific frameworks for understanding phenomena described in ancient texts that were previously dismissed as mythological. The WOW signal, detected on the 15th of August 1977 by the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio State University, represents one of the most intriguing events in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. The signal displayed characteristics consistent with artificial origin, including narrow bandwidth centered at 1420 MHz. The hydrogen line frequency that SETI researchers consider optimal for interstellar communication. The signal intensity increased and decreased over 72 seconds, following the pattern expected for a point source tracked by the telescope's beam as Earth's rotation carried the antenna across the sky. Astronomer Jerry Amon, reviewing computer printouts from the detection, circled the signal notation and wrote WOW in the margin, giving the event its popular name. The signal's origin coordinates in the constellation Sagittarius correspond remarkably to stellar positions mentioned in Mesopotamian astronomical texts as waypoints along the Way of Enlil pathway. The Mulapin star catalogue describes the Way of Enlil as encompassing the central band of the celestial sphere, including portions of Sagittarius, Aquila, and surrounding constellations. The specific right ascension and declination of the WOW signal source, when compared against stellar coordinates recorded in Babylonian astronomical texts, shows correspondence within the precision limits of ancient observations. This correlation suggests either remarkable coincidence or that ancient astronomical documentation preserves information about specific stellar coordinates significant for communication or navigation purposes. Fast radio bursts, discovered in 2007 through analysis of archival data from the Parkes radio telescope in Australia, represent intense bursts of radio emission lasting milliseconds and originating from cosmological distances. Since the initial discovery, over 100 fast radio bursts have been detected by radio telescopes worldwide, with some sources producing repeated bursts enabling detailed position determination. Analysis of fast radio burst locations reveals that several sources correspond to stellar coordinates mentioned in Mesopotamian departure route documentation. Fast radio burst 121-102, a repeating source discovered in 2016, originates from coordinates within the Way of Anu pathway, described in ancient texts as marking northern departure routes. The technological implications of these modern signal detections correlating with ancient astronomical documentation remain speculative but intriguing. The possibility that ancient texts preserve coordinates of communication sources or navigation waypoints suggests that either the texts document actual technological activities, or they incorporate astronomical information from sources possessing knowledge of specific stellar coordinates significant for technological purposes. The narrow band nature of the WOW signal and the intense energy release of fast radio bursts both suggest artificial, or at minimum unusual natural phenomena that might serve as beacons or markers for navigation or communication across interstellar distances. Quantum physics developments during the late 20th and early 21st centuries have provided theoretical frameworks for understanding phenomena described in ancient texts that conventional physics dismissed as impossible. Quantum entanglement, demonstrated experimentally by Alain Aspect in 1982 and refined in subsequent experiments, shows that separated particles maintain instantaneous correlations regardless of distance, potentially enabling faster-than-light information transfer through mechanisms not violating relativity. This phenomenon provides theoretical basis for instantaneous communication across vast distances matching ancient descriptions of divine beings maintaining contact with earthly representatives despite separation by cosmic distances. Research into consciousness and its potential quantum mechanical basis has suggested mechanisms through which information might be accessed non-locally. Theoretical models proposed by physicists including Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff suggest consciousness arises from quantum processes in neuronal microtubules, potentially enabling access to quantum information fields. These theoretical frameworks provide potential scientific explanations for phenomena described in ancient texts including prophetic visions, remote viewing capabilities, and direct knowledge acquisition through mystical experiences. While these theories remain speculative and controversial, they demonstrate that modern physics admits possibilities consistent with ancient descriptions previously dismissed as purely mythological. The institutional frameworks established to support knowledge preservation evolved and adapted to changing political circumstances while maintaining core functions across multiple historical periods. Temple complexes, educational institutions, and administrative systems developed sophisticated methods for concealing their true purposes while continuing to serve genetic and cultural preservation functions. Medieval Islamic texts contain references to ancient families in Mesopotamia and surrounding regions who maintained traditional knowledge systems and claimed descent from pre-Islamic royal bloodlines. These families served as advisors to Islamic rulers and contributed to development of Islamic astronomy, mathematics, and medicine through preservation of ancient knowledge. The sophistication of knowledge they contributed and demonstrated abilities in technological and intellectual areas suggests that bloodline preservation programs successfully maintained divine heritage through transition from ancient to medieval civilizations. The House of Wisdom, established in Baghdad during the Abbasid Caliphate under Caliph Harun al-Rashid between 786 and 809 Common Era, represents the most prominent institutional continuation of ancient knowledge preservation networks. The institution attracted scholars from across the Islamic world and beyond, creating an intellectual center that translated and preserved ancient texts while advancing mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and other sciences. The founding scholars included members of families claiming descent from ancient Mesopotamian priestly and royal lineages, bringing with them knowledge systems preserved through generations of careful transmission. These family traditions included astronomical observation techniques, mathematical calculation methods, and medical procedures that exceeded knowledge available through Greek and Roman sources alone. The Banu Musa brothers, Muhammad, Ahmad, and Al-Hassan, who worked at the House of Wisdom during the 9th century, exemplify the continuation of ancient knowledge traditions through family lineages. Their father, Musa ibn Shakir, claimed descent from ancient astronomical families associated with Babylonian temple observatories, a heritage that supposedly granted them access to observational records and calculation techniques preserved through family archives. The brothers produced works on mechanics, astronomy, and mathematics that demonstrated knowledge of sophisticated engineering principles, including automatic control mechanisms, precision measurement techniques, and geometric methods that appeared nowhere in contemporary Greek or Roman sources, but matched descriptions found in ancient Mesopotamian technical texts. The astronomical tables produced by Islamic astronomers, including Al-Khwarizmi, Al-Battani, and Ibn Yunus, demonstrate precision exceeding what should have been achievable using instruments and methods documented in contemporary sources. These tables included planetary position predictions accurate to within arc minutes, eclipse calculations precise to within minutes of time, and stellar catalogues containing position measurements approaching the limits of naked eye observation. The methods used to achieve this precision included computational techniques and correction procedures that modern analysis shows correspond to Babylonian astronomical methods, preserved in cuneiform texts, but supposedly unknown to medieval Islamic scholars working from Greek sources alone. This suggests that Islamic astronomers had access to ancient Mesopotamian astronomical knowledge through transmission channels independent of the Greek scientific tradition. Medical knowledge preserved by Islamic physicians, including Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, included surgical techniques, pharmaceutical preparations, and diagnostic methods that appeared to derive from sources predating Greek medical traditions. Ibn Sina's canon of medicine describes surgical procedures including cranial surgery for treating head trauma, cataract removal techniques using specialized instruments, and internal surgical procedures for treating abdominal conditions. These techniques match procedures described in ancient Mesopotamian medical texts discovered at Nineveh and other sites, suggesting preservation of medical knowledge through family traditions maintained by descendants of ancient medical practitioners. The pharmaceutical preparations described in Islamic medical texts include complex compound medicines using specific ingredient combinations and preparation methods that mirror formulas preserved in cuneiform medical compendia. The preservation networks that maintained this knowledge across millennia employed sophisticated security measures protecting information from unauthorized access while ensuring transmission to qualified recipients. Family lineages maintained written archives containing technical texts, observational records, and procedural manuals passed from generation to generation through hereditary succession. These archives remained hidden from public knowledge, revealed only to family members who demonstrated requisite capabilities and commitment to preservation mission. Additional knowledge existed in oral traditions and practical skills transmitted through apprenticeship and direct instruction, ensuring that tacit knowledge not reducible to written documentation would survive alongside textual materials. The combination of written and oral transmission created redundant preservation systems that protected knowledge against loss through political upheaval, natural disasters, or social disruption. The accumulated evidence presented throughout this investigation reveals a pattern of human development that challenges fundamental assumptions underlying conventional archaeological and historical frameworks. The Sumerian disappearance represents not an isolated mystery, but rather a crucial transition point in a cyclical process of divine-human interaction that has shaped civilizational development across millennia. The systematic nature of the departure, documented in administrative tablets with bureaucratic precision, the coordinated abandonment of temple complexes prepared for long-term preservation, and the establishment of hereditary guardianship systems all indicate planned withdrawal rather than catastrophic collapse or gradual cultural decline. The preservation networks established during this transition demonstrate sophisticated understanding of knowledge transmission requirements across extended time periods. Underground archive complexes equipped with advanced environmental control systems, mystery schools maintaining technical education programs spanning decades, and hereditary priesthoods selected for genetic and psychological compatibility with preservation missions created redundant systems ensuring essential knowledge would survive political upheavals, natural catastrophes, and cultural transformations. The effectiveness of these preservation efforts becomes apparent through archaeological evidence of technological capabilities, astronomical knowledge, and mathematical sophistication appearing in civilizations separated by vast geographical distances and temporal intervals, suggesting transmission from common sources rather than independent development. The global distribution of flood narratives containing identical technical specifications, the cross-cultural appearance of advanced metallurgical techniques, the systematic encoding of mathematical constants in monumental architecture worldwide, and the genetic signatures preserved in modern populations all point toward coordinated knowledge dissemination from advanced sources predating conventionally recognized civilizations. The correlation between ancient astronomical documentation and modern signal detections, the validation of ancient eclipse predictions through contemporary astronomical software, and the confirmation of architectural precision through laser measurement technologies demonstrate that ancient knowledge systems preserved genuine scientific information rather than mythological speculation. The cyclical pattern evident in these traditions suggests that human civilization has experienced multiple iterations of advancement and collapse, with each cycle benefiting from knowledge preserved through the previous catastrophe. The prophetic frameworks describing return cycles timed to astronomical phenomena, the communication protocols maintaining contact with departed divine beings, and the guardian systems providing ongoing instruction through crisis periods all indicate that the departure represented temporary withdrawal rather than permanent abandonment. The preparation for return evident in sealed archives, trained hereditary lineages, and maintained astronomical observation networks suggests expectation of renewed direct contact when specific conditions materialize. Understanding this cyclical pattern and recognizing the preservation networks that have maintained essential knowledge across millennia provides crucial context for contemporary global challenges. The environmental degradation, technological risks, and social disruptions characterizing the current era match crisis indicators described in ancient return prophecies as conditions triggering renewed intervention. Whether interpreted literally as extraterrestrial contact or metaphorically as emergence of preserved knowledge from hidden repositories, the patterns documented in ancient texts suggest humanity stands at a threshold where access to advanced knowledge systems may become necessary for navigating transformational challenges. The question facing contemporary civilization is whether we possess sufficient wisdom to utilize this preserved heritage constructively, or whether we will repeat the catastrophic mistakes that necessitated previous divine departures and civilizational resets. The answer to this question may determine not only our immediate survival, but also our capacity to transcend the cyclical patterns that have constrained human development throughout recorded history and achieve the permanent advancement that ancient texts suggest represents humanity's ultimate destiny.